Okay, we'll call to order the October 28th, 2024 regular meeting of the East Bethel, Minnesota City Council. Please join us in saying the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is there a reason why that flag should be higher? The American flag? It's a little bit.
Make a motion to adopt tonight's agenda. I would like to add the Capstone Public Sector Solutions invoice to the bills list under the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, we have the motion made and seconded to adopt the agenda as amended. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None heard. Just right before we ask Jerry Strike to come up and give his presentation on the Capstone LLC, his company's presentation of the fire department study that they conducted, I just wanted to mention one thing, and that is that it's the city council's duty to do due diligence over everything paid for by the city of East Bethel within the purview of the city of East Bethel. So that's what the impetus was for this study, was just wanting to know from an independent, highly experienced party, are we doing all we can as a fire department, as a city, and all that. And that was the intent. Just felt it necessary to say that. With that, I'd like to invite up Mr. Jerry Strike of Capstone LLC to give us a presentation on the results of his study. Thank you, Jerry.
All right, Mayor, City Council, good evening. Back in March, as you know, we met to talk about the Minnesota State Fire Service, what it all entailed, how it all functioned and worked. And then we moved into an agreement, and because of some personal commitments, I started a scope of work related to your fire department in mid-June. Mm-hmm. So I'm here today to talk about that with you all and answer some questions. We're gonna stay at a high level, if you will, and answer as many questions as I can in this 75-minute presentation. So you remember the last presentation we had, we talked about what law requires a fire department in the state of Minnesota. And the fact is, there's no law that requires a fire department to even exist. It's a fire service, and it's driven by the townships or the council, city council's wishes to provide services to their community. And in this case, it's responding to fires and explosions, entrapments, rescues of all types in this community, smells and bells, every medical call. Your firefighters onto the National First Responder Day are rocking and rolling this community every day when they get a 911 call. But it's really important for the community to know that this service and all it entails is driven by the city council. And because there's no law that requires a fire department to exist, there are laws that are required for a community to follow. And one of those is Chapter 12, the Emergency Management Plan. You're required by law to have an emergency operations plan for a disaster. And a disaster would be defined as some sort of incident that buries your resources to the point you sort of fall to your knees. And this is a time when city council stays at a policy level, decision-making process during the disaster. There's an emergency manager that's appointed by the mayor. That happens to be the local fire chief. That's been appointed that position. And we work together with all of our resources in the community. And then almost like an onion, we open up into like a regional response, a statewide response, a state to state, and a state or federal response. There are some incidents that will go immediately from a local response to a federal response in a heartbeat, such as an active shooter, or maybe even a bank robbery, a school shooting. Those kinds of things will ramp up right away to local law enforcement, FBI, and so on being involved. There is a state law that requires that there is a statewide fire code, as there is a building code. I'll call them the model of codes. So you all are using like the International Code Council model of codes. And within that code is the plumbing code, the electrical code, the building code, and the fire code. Now, there's a lot of data that says if you focus on prevention, it'll actually have an impact. Where we give people knowledge about how to reduce fires from occurring, and it will in fact work, because knowledge is power and we don't know what we don't know. But the state is a fire code that requires owners to meet it, and your city has a fire inspector who goes out to ensure that the city is protected the best it can by conducting inspections. Now, you can look at that a couple different ways. It's not only gonna help save life and property, but inspections also save your tax base. Because if you have a fire in your community, such as a residential structure, the structure is no longer taxed. An assessor can come and they'll move that tax to property tax only rather than, or the lot tax rather than the full value. So fire codes, fire prevention is actually really important. Criminal background checks are required on all your firefighters by state law. If we do a recruitment campaign and somebody has a history with a felony or arson or a couple other things, they won't be allowed to be a firefighter in Minnesota. So that's a state law. You're required, if there's a death in your community, you're required to call the state fire marshal's office for an investigation of that fire death. Typically, the fire chief would learn of the fire death along with the sheriff's office. They'd work together, notify the administrator, who ramps it up, and we start to talk about communication planning and all that kind of stuff. Fire investigation, you're required by law to conduct a fire investigation for all fire loss greater than $100. So that means pretty much everything. And that's been in place since 1901. And the reason for that is because the state and the nation want to know what their fire problem is. So your fire department, after every incident, fills in a report and check boxes that eventually gets uploaded into the state MFER system, which goes into the national system, which ultimately tells us what our fire problem is. And then we give that to prevention people to reduce it, to try to reduce it. Confidential data, just like you, in City Hall, confidential data, the fire department is required to protect that, such as things that come on their phone and pagers. We're not supposed to talk about people's incidents, we're supposed to protect data. Hazardous materials, investigate, disseminate issues, that's a state law, you have to mitigate any kind of hazard material. And then of course OSHA has, we're an OSHA state in Minnesota. It's actually one of the threats that we need to talk about because OSHA is looking to forward their rules 40 years. Hasn't been looked at, the fire brigade rules haven't been looked at for 40 years, but they're looking to fast forward that 40 years because over the last 200 years, we continue to harm and kill firefighters exactly the same way. So that will put a lot of mandates on this community in the future. So we want to make sure we stay abreast of that. But the important part to note is there are some laws that you're required to have. And when we conducted the investigation and the research on your community, we can see that you asked me in the end of my contract to review your emergency operation plan. You have a plan, and that plan needs to be constantly updated and reviewed. If you have a plan and it sits on a shelf and you can blow dust off it, it's not really a plan, right? So we need to continue to do some training. I believe the fire chief said you recently did some training and you're talking about, you know, the emergency operation plan and so on. So let's move into the East Bethel Fire Department. East Bethel is unique in this county and probably in most of the metro in that you're one of the cities that are managing 3 fire stations with what I call a volunteer fire department. So state law has 2 definitions defining a firefighter. You're either a full-time firefighter in state law or you're a volunteer firefighter. And within the volunteer definition, this state and nation has many different models of how they operate it. And although we have the same mission and purpose, we operate differently, and that's under your control. No two fire departments are exactly the same. But your model is of a volunteer fire department. You have a full-time fire chief who manages those volunteers. They get paid by hour, and they get paid a pension. Pension and hourly equals total compensation. When you take all that together, and you get to see the total compensation of that firefighter and what they're receiving. We'll get into that in a little bit. You recently hired a fire inspector, and that fire inspector goes out and does fire inspections, but that fire inspector also does a lot of things to manage the daily operation of the organization. So the fire chief is appointed by you all and managed by the city administrator, and he's tasked to manage a pretty complex system of emergency responders, fire stations, multiple pieces of equipment, HR, and so on. We'll get into that later. And the fire inspector goes through their inspections, and I reviewed those, and he's continually updating and doing inspections and putting stuff in reports. And the fire inspector, for 1 hour of fire inspection, he's probably spending 2 hours on reports and catch up and code review to try to write the code and come back and do inspections and re-inspections. At the time of the review, we had 31 volunteer firefighters, and it's projected, I believe at the end of this year, we'll be at 1,033 calls. 1,033 calls is a lot of calls to go on for 31 people. That's a call, 1.4 calls a day, I believe it was, that we're in forward motion to meet. So during this this review, I met with all of you, and as I told the firefighters, because I met with them about the survey last Friday as well, or Monday, is when I met with each one of the council members, you all had the same thing to say. Are we doing it well, and what can we do to support the firefighters? And I think it's very commendable for you to be focused on this, in my opinion, because fire departments that go through this get an outside view of what somebody else sees, and we can start to move the ship in a different direction if we need to make it better. I met with the city administrator on multiple occasions and in line with them. Met with the fire chief on multiple occasions, the fire inspector. I met with each of the fire officers. And keep in mind, the fire chief is the full-timer. There's a little branch of the fire inspector. And then in order to manage the span of control of those 3 stations, the fire chief appoints fire officers. And this is known as our fire hierarchy. It goes firefighter, lieutenant, captain, district chief, and then the fire chief, right? So you're supposed to go to your supervisors first, and eventually it goes up the chain, and if it needs to get to the chief, it gets to the chief. The chief is managing the largest department in the city, with 31 people in it, and the span of control needs to be shared. The firefighters, I met with half of the firefighters, and most of them in person. So I met with a lot of people. I met with the Anoka County Sheriff's Office. We went and had coffee. I met with Alina Ambulance, who provides your ambulance service. And I met with, through messaging and phone calls and email, with all of the area fire chiefs that would come into your area through mutual aid. So we got a really good perspective of the fire department and how people feel about it. We also put together a 75-question survey for the firefighters. I promised the firefighters that if they completed it and they're all professional with it, that I would come back and show them the commonalities of what their peers thought. And that's what I did prior to coming here. And maybe because I promised that, 80% of the firefighters responded to that survey. So that is not typical. We would, hope for a half, but 80% responded to it. Then the questions varied, as you saw in the report, from how do you feel about pumping from a fire truck, sort of giving an idea and a wide range for a bunch of people in the organization. From the training officer can now use this report to say, hey, we could do some more training on emergency management or on pumping or on medical stuff. And then, how is our culture? How's our leadership staff? Where do you think we need to work to have more fun and to stay here, right? And so those questions went all well. But the firefighters are summed up, when I sum up the report today, what do they really want? Believe it or not, one of the number one things they want is accountability. And we talked about that the other day. They want people held accountable. They want to be held accountable. And I always say that's a double-edged sword, because when you're held accountable, you never want to be held accountable, right? So they want good quality training. They don't want to waste their time, and we talked about this before. But for the volunteer, time is the new money today. And I know we've talked about this in past, but I, for the last 4 years, have conducted a statewide recruitment and retention plan across the entire state. I was contracted by the Minnesota State Fire Department Association, and that ends next month. And I'm likely going to go to another state and do the exact same thing. But here's what I know, is time is changed from when I started in the 80s, and I could just run to the station anytime. Firefighters today want to make sure that when they come to training, it's well prepared and we're not just wasting their time, right? They want to be safe. They want to make sure their equipment is safe, that they feel safe, their command system is working well, that there's an understanding in the organization, not just the fire department, all the way up to the council. There's an understanding that we're all human, and I may not be able to make that event, or life just happened and I couldn't make it. They want respect, as we all do. They want good quality leadership from the lieutenant all the way up to the fire chief to the mayor. They want quality leadership, and that's important to them. I wanted to put this together because I think there's a misunderstanding of what actually happens in a volunteer fire department. A volunteer fire department does not mean that nobody's getting paid and we're just sitting around not doing anything. But these are just some of the high-level things the fire chief deals with every day, from recruiting and retaining people to all the data practices, the FLSA, the OSHA rules, just all of the requirements related with human resources and fitness and who's fit for duty, and payroll and state reporting, and on and on and on, to managing every piece of equipment, from a pump that doesn't work to a tire that's popped to a saw that doesn't start. All of that comes through the fire office, and that individual has to manage it. And quite frankly, sometimes it's just too much. Sometimes there's a lot to do with for one person. All the agreements and keeping up with policies and procedures, the budget, purchases, and so on. From a response perspective, this community is a compilation of a lot of things that can happen. I know from digging a lot of fire scenes here back in the day that you've had a number of homes that have had fires. You have wildland fires that move into the urban interface and start homes and garages on fire. You have a very active Highway 65. There's some of the most impactful crashes in our county have been on. You've got a waterway. You've got snowmobile, UTV through the ice. You have commercial property. You have a lot of things that can happen. And every new home, every new commercial building, every new, maybe even roadway, creates or could create a new risk for the community. And we keep adding these risks on to the 31 staff members that we have. And we'll get into that, why that is so important to talk about. And you may remember this response time matrix. When the Anoka County 911 Communications Center receives a 911 call. The telecommunicator picks up the phone and they automatically get a automatic location indicator and number indicator if it's called from an identifiable source. And that call taker may take 2 minutes to enter that into their CAD, computer-aided dispatch system. All of the calls are preloaded into CAD. The fire chief works with dispatch to determine, okay, if this incident type comes out like a CO alarm in a home, we're gonna send a duty officer there, like a single unit with one person in it, not an entire station. But if this call comes in and they type in structure, like a structure fire, not only are all 3 stations gonna come, but if it's daytime, we may call Ham Lake, Isani, and our neighboring departments to come help us at the exact same time, known as auto-aid, all right? So when we talk about medicals in a little while, we'll talk about those codes and those IDs that go into CAD. Well, then there's a dispatch time where the dispatcher actually has to use the computer and dispatch it. We're automatically dispatched by a computer today. In fact, your firefighters don't hear a human voice. They hear a digital voice announcing the call. When they go in service, then they start to communicate with a human. They do have, your firefighters have computer-aided dispatch. Is your touch screen working, Chief? Can you go en route and stuff now?
You can.
Okay, yeah. So if rather than talking on the radio and garbling all up, you can just put en route and on scene through a touch of a screen. So you have a lot of technology in your equipment here that's connected directly to the computer-aided dispatch. So when dispatch types in something, man with a gun, blue shirt, blah, 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 the firefighter can see it, they can stage, they can do whatever based off the information they see. Well, then there's this thing known as turnout time. All of you have a pager on your hip. You're doing whatever you do during your life. Pager goes off because the 911 system activated you. They typed in the address, which says East Bethel. It goes into a geo file and says that's station 2, and you're all on station 2. Your pager goes off, you listen to the call, and we know that we need an engine or 2 to go to that incident. So your firefighters right now, your volunteers, are trying to decide if it's the right time to go. If it's my anniversary that night, it's not a good idea for me to go. If it's a CO alarm, you know what I mean? If it's a structure fire, maybe everybody's gonna come. But they have to make a decision if it's a good time for them to go or not. If they decide to go, the time starts for turnout time. Turnout time is from the time of alarm and that decision is made to go on getting to the station, getting assembled in the equipment that you need with a group, and then getting in the truck and driving to the scene, all right? So once you get that group assembled and you're sitting in the truck, now response time starts. So when you get phone calls that say, it took 20 minutes for you guys to get there, sometimes as a chief, I was like, that's pretty dang good on an Easter Sunday, you know, when everybody's at church. But it's important for the council to know you're not a 5-minute water on the fire kind of department, all right? You have a longer response time because your fire service model is using volunteers who may be at home, Home Depot, on their snowmobile, wherever they're at. That turnout time matters. And that turnout time can be up to 12 minutes. There are some departments in this state that are up to 15 minutes because their volunteer recruitment is so low. Did you have a question? Mayor? Oh. So then there's response time, and once the response arrives, then they have to set up the job, the scene, and the National Fire Protection Association says you should be able to do that in like 2 minutes. Pull the right line, get the pump engaged, get water in the line, decide if you're going in, if you're gonna make a grab, whatever you're gonna do, you're gonna cut the person out, you should be able to make a decision on that. And the important part is those are handled by your citizens in this community who have offered to do it in their voice on the survey. They're doing it because they want to do something bigger for their community. They're not doing it for the money, right? So the response time is really important. So the scope of work that you asked me to provide is, are we doing it well? And within the report, it goes into much more detail, but in the interest of time today, I'm gonna take you through what we know as a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So what are the strengths? East Bethel is very well respected. The fire department is very well respected. Everyone I talk to says when they get on the scene, they know what they're doing, they have the equipment, they're excited to be there, and they leave. And that's all we could ask for, is there, I didn't hear one person of all those people I talked to say those guys and gals are a bunch of knuckleheads. They're just well-respected fire department. I've only known it that way, and I've been in this county for 30 years, or longer. So the firefighters plan to stay. You saw in the survey that most of the firefighters are gonna stay here more than 10 years, which is a positive. Your equipment is well maintained. I didn't see a lot of equipment in disarray. I know the chief wants to make a couple little tweaks to some response vehicles, which I think is a good idea. It's actually going to save you a couple $100,000. But the equipment's in well prepared. In fact, when I asked the firefighters, what equipment, you saw it in the report, what equipment do you feel you need right now? Most of them said, I feel like we're pretty good. We have enough equipment right now to do what we need to do the job. People are well trained, they like to be trained. You use a variety of trainers in your community from the outside and inside. And I'm always a fan of someone from the outside coming in to give us a new perspective in our training. Just making sure, as we talked about at our meeting, that it's realistic for East Bethel. We don't have a Chicago fire coming in here and talking about a 28-story high-rise when we don't have a 28-story high-rise. So, but they're well trained. You have a variety of just really good people, and it's a really cool department, quite frankly. What are some of the weaknesses? I put leadership change in there, and I've been part of this myself. When there's a new leader in the organization, you can expect some sort of disruption, right? And in a new position. And firefighters sort of feel that new wave. You had the assistant chief here for 30-something years who was the chief, I think almost in the same position. And you had an outside chief come in for a long time who had a lot of experience and connected across the state. And when you leave both of those at the same time, there's a time to sort of learn and regroup and connect, right? You're not going to capture all those years in whoever comes in. You know, it's just, and I've been hired from the outside several times. The department is complex. There's 3 stations. 3 stations sort of have their own cultures. You know, when you hang around a group, you sort of get groupthink, and your station is better than the rest, or whatever it is. But we need to get together, as I said in the report, into the firefighters as one department, not 3 departments. We need to be one, but it's complex, not only the incidents you respond to, but the number of people that you have, to a variety of demographics. And when we talk about generational differences, although that isn't something I'm gonna say that's the reason why, but we know our baby boomers want a phone call. But we know Gen Zers want a text. So when you see in the report communication's terrible, well, from what I witnessed is we're sending out emails, we send out text messages, and we have a newsletter, and I've seen on every event I have, the chief or someone in front telling people about what's going on in the department. So it's just a variety of I'm gonna say, ideas of what good communication is. The stations are aging. I heard a number of times that Station 2 is aging, that there isn't a lot of area for them to just hang out if they wanted to. There's no capture for exhaust, those kinds of things. You can work with the chief on, but the Station 2 is aging. Station 3, There's a lot of discussion about that station because it's hard to recruit for that station. So we have to keep focusing on how Station 3 plays into it too. And succession planning. I put, and we'll see in the end here, succession planning is really important. It's really important to have a number 2 after a number 1. Because right now you have a full-time chief, and the next in the hierarchy with the hierarchical power would be your district chiefs who are volunteers. So it's important to have some sort of hierarchy so that you can continue the progress within if you wish, and you're not, constantly looking for the next person. So what are the threats? The number 1 threat on my list is retention. We have a retention problem in the state of Minnesota and in this nation. I'm not convinced we have a recruitment problem. I think this council and councils across the country can do things that will inspire people to come to this organization. It just takes time, planning, and it has to be a daily focus to keep people here. And we talked about in the, we'll get into it when we look at the recommendations, but because time is money, money is money. And with townhomes at $300,000 to $400,000 and homes, just skyrocketing with interest rates and so on, anything we can do to assist our volunteers with some sort of monthly income to inspire them to come will help them, even though most of them will say, I'm not here for that. The hierarchy jumping, we call it, is when people, they go all through the hierarchy from, they bypass the lieutenant and talk to the captain and so on, all the way up to the council, if you will. But hierarchy jumping, making sure and supporting a clear hierarchy within the organization is really important. I've heard a number of times about call volume. You're at 1,033 calls. That's a lot of calls, with 80% of those medical. And if I don't know, and I will say that your fire department has a data expert on their team, and they have really good data. And if you broke up the 80%, I don't know how many of those calls we could determine as high priority versus low priority. Like, I can die if someone doesn't come, or I have a bleeding tattoo scab. There's a high and a low priority. Where can we make the biggest impact as a volunteer department? And what types of calls do you all want them to go to? So we'll talk about call volume. And then there's always threats of reputation, of course. What people say, what goes on. We're always protecting our reputation. We're always protecting what may come in the news or what happens on an incident. So that's a typical one that's put into threats. Is today, especially with the use of social media and phones and everything else, we have to protect our reputation. But there are a lot of opportunities in this town. And this is what's exciting about these types of reviews, is your community's changing. And I've probably driven through your community 40 times. And you have a lot of new roads, you have houses down the road that one's finally up, wasn't up when I drove through there earlier. It's all up, and you got lots of things happening, you got new commercial area. You just have a lot of opportunity with your demographics. And the age of your demographics is at the perfect age for recruiting. Where people have a home, they may have a couple smaller kids, they know what they're doing, they're gonna stay here a long time, and they're making decisions, and they can come to the fire station and say, I can offer you some time. There's a lot of opportunity for training. You see in the report, the number 1 request is for leadership, culture, teamwork kind of training from the top all the way down to the bottom. And there's a lot of opportunity, and I don't know if you have received many SAFER grants. Have you ever applied for a SAFER grant? Okay. For the SAFER or AFG? Yeah. So if you haven't received a SAFER grant, I'm willing to do that for you for free. And look at your past ones and see how we can get you some money from FEMA. It has 0 cost to you over a 4-year period, and we should do that in 2025. there's a lot of opportunity to save this fire service model, this response model. And I think through the recommendations, we can do that. And as I told the chief and the firefighters, you know, I'm a phone call away. I'm on the other end of 22. And if there's anything you need from me moving forward, you just call me and I can help. So we'll get through the recommendations. The number one recommendation was, you know, you're at 31 firefighters. Typically stations have 20 firefighters. If I could get you to 25 firefighters, if you choose to go to 1,033 calls, the more firefighters you have, the less impact it has on the people's time and life. If they choose to keep coming to all those calls, that's great, but there is a feeling in the volunteer fire service world, or as a firefighter in general, that I know there's a few staff that are here. There's just this immense feeling that I need to leave and go help, because we know there's only a few people coming to the station. Recruitment and retention, in route with one, is really something we shy away from, where one person's driving the truck. And there have been incidents over the years, it's happened to me too, where we just don't have anyone responding to the station. And that is an unknown of this model, is we don't know who's coming and when they're coming. And until we got that new active 911 system and so on, where we can see where people are, there's a lot of times we would stand on the scene managing it and wondering if anybody's coming or not. And that's not, you can lose sleep over that. But I'd like to get you to 20 per station for station 1 and 2, 15 for station 3. Those are very, very challenging numbers, but I'm offering to help with that. And
Can I ask a question?
yes, sir.
Do you think that we have the right setup as far as having 3 stations? Or was the third one not as necessary or whatever? I live down near Coon Lake Beach, so I'm familiar with Station 3 down there. But I just wondered, because the numbers seem to be driven by the number of buildings you have. So what I'm asking is, are the buildings the right configuration in the right places, all that kind of thing?
So the buildings are in place probably to reduce response time.
Right, for sure.
So rather than everybody coming to station one from your location and then drive all the way back,
Yep.
we put a station closer.
Yep.
And the only way, and we've had discussion of this, the only way, and the other danger, if you will, I guess the other, what I don't like to see is there's a fire in the community and that a truck never comes out of that fire station.
Mm-hmm.
So it gives sort of a false hope if we don't have firefighters going to it. But the community needs to know that is the model we have. And they can volunteer. We would love to have more people step up and volunteer for the community. But the only way I would do that is if you staffed your station with a duty crew in the future and you eliminated that duty, that response time of that firefighter by having them in the station and going to duty crew model in the
I guess what I'm asking is, if you were designing it, would you have built station number 3?
Right.
Would you have? Pretend it's not there, would you?
In going back, there may have been a group of people that stood up, and I don't know what the maximum number was at that station, do you? At any given time, because you've been around.
For many years, there wasn't anybody there.
We've actually 4 has been most of it.
Okay. Yeah, with 4 people, I probably wouldn't have.
Yeah. It's just a question that's come into my mind
Yeah.
since it was built, actually.
Right.
Anyway, I didn't mean
Yeah.
to interrupt your
No problem, it's a great
presentation.
question. We can get staff in the fire stations. We have to make it the number 1
Mm-hmm.
mission right now. I would also appoint a recruitment coordinator. You can either appoint someone within who likes to meet people and knows social media, knows how to stream online, because we're trying to get a hold of everybody on a flat screen. No longer are we posting on a bulletin board and finding a bunch of people there. You know, we're using flat screens. So get a recruitment coordinator involved. put them at the table of the leadership team and have them, give them a stipend or whatever you choose and have them start knocking it out of the park. And you had a bunch of people, two or three people go through the Minnesota State Fire Department Association training not too long ago. But that needs to start right away. In fact, I've already had emails from some of the staff here looking for brochures and stuff to get it going. The leadership training, soft skills, from just what is leadership theory, human resources, to how to be a good team member, from the newest firefighter all the way up. We need to understand each other. We had a really good discussion about this, is we're all different people. We come from different places. And also, if you're not feeling comfortable there, or you're just not liking it there, as I mentioned the other day, it's okay to tap out and say, I just have to, this just isn't for me anymore. But my fear is when we have some contention in the stations, and if that continues, people can leave. So we try to create an environment that is very inspiring, that makes people feel welcome. And this is from the entire department. You can see it just in the survey. It's not just one person. There's a number of person in the organization that other people feel are having some challenges. So, for our succession planning would be next. We talked about adding an assistant chief at an operations level, so the chief can stay high level, manage the budget, do recruitment, get people in the door, manage everyday issues, and have an operations person manage the rubber on the road and the reports and those kinds of things. Pay structure for volunteers, you're actually not at a bad rate. Our pay structure in Minnesota ranges from, we do have some volunteers still, all the way up to $35 an hour. So, but it's really important for you to know that the pension, along with the hourly, equals the compensation. So we try to give our hourly rate a little bit higher to attract people in and keep them with us. And when they meet the 5-year mark, they start to get the benefit of the pension being at their 40%, and now they sort of secured their pension. I understand there's going to be like a COLA increase this year, but you're not low, but you could be a little higher. Next, probably the lot of discussion on this for me, because I want to make sure I'm making the right recommendation. With 80% of your calls being medical calls, I'm making a recommendation to evaluate those medical calls and determine how many you're actually making an impact on. I have done this myself and made 40% cuts in the medical calls. The idea of that is in the 3 stations that I have managed on 2 departments, chief for 15 years, I had one that was at 800 calls, I had one that was at 450, and I had one that was at 200 to 250. I never had any turnover at 250. I had a little bit of turnover at 450. I had all kinds of turnover at 800. And if I send them to 3 medical calls, they may not come back for that 4th, which is the car fire or the garage fire. Most will come for a structure fire, a plane down, people trapped in a bus. That's boom. But if they've given 3 hours of a low priority medical call, and Alina feels comfortable with this, because I spoke with them. I spoke with the sheriff's office. They feel comfortable with this recommendation. In fact, other communities around you are asking Alina the same question. So I'm making a recommendation to have the chief decide what calls high in priority. I gave him the top 10, which is like heart attacks, not breathing, birth of a baby, of course, shooting, those kinds of things. And with this caveat, Alina and the sheriff's office can call you at any time if they have more information that says this is upgraded to a different call, right? Came in as one that fell, and this is where the fire service, may not like this recommendation Because sometimes we do have somebody who fell, then the next question is, why did they fall? And then we learn they fell because they had a stroke or something. So, but the dispatchers do a really good job of taking as much information as they can and asking those questions to qualify the incident. This is supported by Alina and the Sheriff's Office, and the Sheriff's Office here today, I could talk about it if they wish. Number 6, if we're gonna stay at the call volume or even be at 700 calls, I think we need to start what I call a soft duty crew program, not mandatory, but we give people the option of working shifts, like a 4-hour shift at Station 1 during the daytime with the chief and the inspector. So rather than 2 or 1 in a car, we have a full engine going out in a matter of a minute. And while they're on the duty crew, we can do maintenance of all stations, we can train, we can do fire prevention, we could do maybe even some inspections. And if the inspection looks like it needs to be elevated, then it gets elevated to the inspector. There's a number of things that duty crew can do, and I'll tell you what, it'll incrementally make them a much better firefighter when they're on shift and they have the responsibility of being en route right away and making that impact. So we talked about that at our meeting as well. And I would recommend you start looking at it on weekends during the busy time so people can stay at home with their families. And this crew would go to all the lower priority calls. All the big calls would get toned out as they normally do. And on holidays, whatever your holiday is, your 12 holidays or whatever you have in the city. The fire department's working on upgrading policies and procedures. You'll see in the report, they'd like to know, more about their policies and procedures. That's an ongoing process, and in the interest of time, it gets time, but then the widget broke, so I gotta go fix the widget, and then the truck is down, so I gotta go fix the truck. It's all about span of control and priorities. But policies are work rules, as we explained to the firefighters. This is what's expected of you at work, because you're an employee of the city of East Bethel. So you need to follow policies and procedures. And then finally, communication plan. And that is, from the chief on down, meeting on a regular basis with the council. Majority want some sort of awards kind of, they want to pin the badge at the council meeting, and they want the council to, to shake their hand, and they want to maybe come to the employee if you have a cookout or something. But I think when we work together as a community, you don't feel like you're in a silo, right? We get everybody involved and get them together so that we can work together. And conclusion is, your community continues to grow. We need to transform with it. The fire service is not, it's just not cheap. Fire trucks went from, 550,000, 600,000 5 years ago to $1 million. And it takes 3 years to get them today. Turnout gear for the whole fire PPEs, $7-8 grand per firefighter. And if we take on a new firefighter and buy them new gear and they leave in a year, I don't know if that gear can be used anymore. Who's it gonna fit? If we have a really small frame person or a really big frame person, sometimes that just sits there in its eternity. The other thing I didn't mention that I want to mention and commend you for is you have one of the highest number of females in your organization than most in the county. You guys are, you're just different. You're different. 5% of the country has, of our firefighters are female, but you guys are 30%. It's just not heard of. So it's important to continue, and that helps with recruitment, because when we have a group of strong females who love to be in the community, that inspires others to come in, which also ensures or makes me want to focus more on really good workplace policies and procedures with respectful workplace policies and all that kind of stuff, and so on. The fire service is not cheap. We talked about that. Stay focused on inspiring people. That's everybody's job. The firefighter's job too is to always recruit And there used to be a rule back in the day that you filled your own locker before you retired or left. You had to go out and find somebody to join the team and give them your locker and go from there. But all of this can be done, and I want to say it again. There's a lot of really good people here who really like being here. They're doing really good work. They're coming to training and maintenance and prevention, and you know, I can't even get you to understand all the stuff that they do without even people asking them. They just stop at the station and roll hose because they know those 5 links of hose need to be rolled, you know? And they don't put time in for that. That just comes from their heart. But with a few tweaks, I think there's a number of things we can do to improve your recruitment and retention. And overall, the goal is to keep this model the way it is as long as we can. And that's all I have.
Thank you very much, Jerry.
Any questions?
Guys, any questions?
Yeah, I have some. I read your report 2 or 3 times. Every time I do read it, I find more things that I feel I'm concerned with anyways. But in your report, you mentioned some serious concerns. Are these concerns redeemable? Or for the sake of the fire department, do we need to start making some difficult decisions?
So what is that reporting to that you wrote down?
In your report on different categories of
Yeah,
leadership,
yeah.
one thing for sure.
Yeah, leadership and teamwork together. I think we need to, like I said, we need trainers to come in and talk about soft skills, and we need to work on those together. We need to work on how to work along all demographics and go from there. But if they haven't had the training, and we have this wide variety of demographics and change of leadership, not in a negative way, but coming in and, you know, maybe wanting to do things that have been, do something differently that's been there for a long time, it's naturally gonna create some waves. But I think without providing the training and providing the expectations and good policies and procedures, everyone seemed to be very positive at the meeting the other day about working together to resolve these issues.
That's definitely important, that we all have to work together, otherwise we just have a disruption in the whole department.
That's right.
Also, I got, how should we focus on recruitment? Whose job is it to be doing that?
Yeah. Well, ultimately, it's the chief's job. You know, ultimately, the chief would know what numbers they need to have. You've always been, I think 45 was the number that you've been trying to get to.
45 is our approved.
Is the approved, so your previous leadership group of this council capped it at 45. So we're gonna wanna revisit that, because if your policy or your ordinance says you can only do, or a resolution says you can only do 45. And that's probably, I'm gonna say an older decision when your department wasn't as busy, and it sort of helps you balance the budget and sort of when you know, if we're at 45, here's what we can expect payroll for and so on. But it's all of our responsibility, you know, ultimately it's the chief's, right? But it's all of our responsibility, including the council, to find people who want to serve our community, right? It really is. If you have a neighbor who you think would be a good firefighter and they're looking for things to do, I always say, hey, have you ever thought about being a firefighter? Most people don't even know they can be a firefighter because they think East Bethel is a full-time department and they're just waiting for calls, but we're not. East Bethel is a volunteer department. Any citizen in your community can become part of it through that process. But
Right.
The next question was, how do we target it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to target it and we'll get some people together and I'll walk them through that. I'll help them. We're going to put up signs and we're going to market through social media. And like I said, I'll put on a class right in your training room and try to get other departments in there too. And there's funding out there that can help with some of the brochures and that kind of stuff. But It needs to be visible everywhere. We need to continually have an election on recruiting firefighters. And there should be signs everywhere that say, we need you, here's how you get there.
Okay. And also is, what is the single most important thing the department needs at this time, in your opinion?
As I said in the top 5, they want people held accountable. They want the respect, continued respect from the leadership, council on down.
Could you flesh that out a little bit on the accountability thing?
Yeah,
What do they
well-
want
well,
to,
if-
what are
if-
they, what are they
Yeah, if
not
there's people
getting?
coming into the organization who are disruptive, they don't want that disruption. They want the chief to deal with it. They want the administrator, whoever, to deal with that disruption. Enforce policy. If you have a policy and you're not enforcing it, then it becomes what? Doesn't become a policy.
Recommendation.
Yeah, right,
Right.
yeah.
So then, in your opinion, since you've done this, is there respect in the chain of command that you see?
It varies. It varies. But I will say that's not uncommon. And I'm gonna say that because you had a major change in leadership recently. And I think time and good direction could help with that.
Right, because I know that's important. When I was on Bethel Fire Department for 10 years, it started at the chief and went all the way down. And that is important. If you don't have the right person, in my opinion, at the top, that can ruin the whole department. That's my feeling for it. And also, I got some more, on page 34, I'm just asking you this, Jerry, like, as far as all the officers that we have, starting at the chief, did you look at each one of the officers' certification? Not at all?
No,
So we don't know if they have everything that's required to be that captain, lieutenant, district chief, duty chief, whatever. So we don't know that.
we don't know that.
That's important in my eyes that we should, because I know when I was on Bethel, it's like, I went to firefighter 1, 2, 3, and you have to keep that up and maintain it, because you're gonna learn new stuff all the time. I mean, I've been out of it for 20, 30 years. But that's, my thought is that I was thinking that would be an important thing for us to know.
You have job descriptions, and within there are who you're looking to hire or appoint. And sometimes the best move is to grab from the bottom and not necessarily the one who's been there the longest, you know what I mean?
Right.
But your firefighters and your fire officers have asked for more training. I'm not convinced that having a certificate of Fire Officer 1 means I'm a good leader.
Right.
It's the elementary lessons of fire service leadership, but, so you'll have to go through, and I didn't have that information, that
Okay.
personnel.
That's what I was just curious, you know, because I know I was a captain on Bethel, and it's like you're required to do this or that. But also, you have to have leadership skills. And if you don't, that can be a big time effect on all the firefighters below you or above you. So that's what I'm just reaching out to see if we've checked into any of that at all, or just, but
Nope.
then you said you didn't, so
Nope, personnel files, I didn't get into
Okay.
those.
that's all I have for now.
I got a question, Jerry. In your report, you say our trucks are well-maintained, but do we have the right equipment? Do we have the best stuff we can give our guys? Are we lacking in any areas, or are we staying on top of that?
Yeah, the only thing that I would recommend in the future is you're in need of a ladder truck. And that's a big piece of equipment. You've been able to supplement that need because you have a multi-story senior living center that our ladders can't get to the roof on. But you were able to build an agreement and relationship with the city of Ham Lake to automatically dispatch theirs. And that seems to be working. And because of that, you just have to keep an eye on that, and that may have been a really good, agreement. We all talk about, there's 4 aerials around us, why don't we share them? And you guys are already ahead of that, so that's a good thing. Other than that, firefighters, I ask them and I let them tell me. You have all the equipment to do the jobs for the incidents that we could predict in your community. They would like to have different hydraulic tools, jaws of life kinds of things. There's new technology now that allows them to be lighter, that allows them to have batteries, that have lights on them. You don't need 2 people to carry it and have this greasy, grimy hose connected to a power pump, that you gotta get there. So quicker action on the scene to the patient to cut them out. But outside of that, and wild in gear, outside of their PPE, try not to wear your personal protective fire structural gear all the time, because if you wear it everywhere, it reduces its life, and that gets expensive. So you find a lesser option so you can save the life of that garment. Second set of gear is always of interest because of the health interests and so on, but I didn't hear anything that was like, oh, wow, but I noticed the ladder right away. And then when the chief said, we have an agreement, and I saw that, I thought, wow, that's pretty cool, because I think a lot of us should be looking at that. And it's within a mile and a half,
They moved it up to their station 2.
Oh, okay.
Constance, crossed out. So yes, it is within about a mile and a half of our structure.
And I think that 2.5 for OSHA would ding you if it were further. So you're actually, that's a pretty good agreement, in my opinion. As long as they're willing to continue to send it our way. And it's not often, but if there's an incident on any of your commercial or multi-story, and keep in mind, the aerial is not about going straight up. It's about getting from the center line of the road to the roof peak, so I don't have to put firefighters on the roof. I can cut a hole on the ladder. I can take Mrs. Smith off the deck without putting her on a ladder and trying to carry her down. So, and then you have, Andovers, there's a number of them. Blaine, there's a number of them that would come.
But do you know the current price of a ladder truck these days?
2.6 mil.
2.6. So I think agreement is, at this point, is much better than,
That depends on if it's a bucket or a stick. They're very expensive. I mean, I'm at 15 conferences a year looking at those trucks, and they just keep going up.
Did you have another question, Tom?
Well, it was regarding the inventory at the firehouse. Wanted to make sure that we had not only what we needed on the trucks, but what we needed back at the shop.
Yeah.
I don't know if you had a chance to look at that or see how it is.
Yeah, everything seems to be in order. They have enough hose, they have enough, there's an extra trailer there. There's actually some things they're looking at maybe getting rid of, or getting out of the inventory because it's been there a long time. And when we go back to the discussion of, some of the contention that may be occurring, when I as a chief decide to switch a truck to maybe a smaller truck, well, we've had this truck forever, it creates contention. And they don't understand that, that truck is carrying a medical bag, but it's $450,000 to replace when I could buy one for $120,000. So, some of that contention comes from that as well.
Yeah, that's all I have.
Guys?
Yeah, I got a couple things. I guess what I was looking for in the report was something completely different, the inventory and facts about the city and our growth and that stuff we all kind of know. I'm looking at one of the things, most firefighters feel the department's culture is negative.
Mhm.
And by that, I was kind of looking for an answer. Why is it negative?
Mhm.
Now, is it because out of the 30 individuals, only 24 took the survey and the other ones didn't? And that's the case, what would keep them from wanting to take that survey and get that information out? I mean, if it's a hostile environment, I spent 8 years in EMS, and between firefighters, police, and, well, EMS, you gotta depend on that person you're with. And if there's negativity, I'm gonna be a little nervous about, is this person gonna take care of business when they need to, or are they not? So I was kinda looking for a reason, maybe you saw something or heard something that somebody said this is what it is. Cause I'm looking at a fair treatment question, 33% say they're not treated fairly. Why not? I'm not asking you for their particular answer. What I'm asking you is, did they tell you why they felt that way? And is there some way we could get that information otherwise? Because that's what's gonna lose a lot of guys, I think. 84% believe there's a bully in the organization. That's really disheartening. Especially in a field where, again, you gotta depend on each other. And people need to remember, because I spent some years as training officer, everybody's not born knowing everything. And everybody that comes on, maybe they're not as quick to learn, or like you were saying, well, maybe not, this certificate doesn't mean anything. Well, you're right. Sometimes I would hire the C student and let the A student go because the A student thought they knew everything. The C student was willing to learn, and then the more they learn of how critical it is and risks they're taking, they're gonna be the one that's gonna wanna do it more. If a person is ridiculed because they don't know something, or maybe they do it wrong the first time, they have to do it 2-3 times, then they need that opportunity without somebody looking down on them, or maybe saying, yeah, I work with so-and-so, boy, were they stupid. Well, 71% department's not working as a team. I mean, you already made that. And that's stuff that can be changed.
Yep.
Right? I mean, nothing's, 34, well, I'm not gonna get that personal into this stuff. But again, my looking at this was to say, okay, look, you hear things, some conjecture, some isn't. What's really going on here? Because we have some firefighters in the neighborhood, and one of them's got 4 kids. Yeah, when he gets a call, he's out the door. Could be Christmas, could be Thanksgiving, could be anyhow, and that's any firefighter. Or police or EMS, you get the call, you're gone. And people need, I don't know how you get them to know that, but education to the public, I think, is a big thing. So that it's not, oh, gee whiz, I get to go down and drive the fire truck. And like you said, there's a lot of hidden things that go on that firefighters do behind the scenes that just isn't taken. So when you hear things, you got to kind of take it with a grain of salt and say, is this really going on? So I was looking to try and find out if a firefighter has an issue, and this is dealing with the hierarchy, and they have an issue, they're afraid to go to their captain, they're afraid to go to the lieutenant, the captain, and they're afraid to go to the chief, so they go to a city council person. And I think that needs to be left open. I don't think it should be abused, but I'll compare it with, people used to come in here at a public forum, and they would say things. And if certain people didn't like it, well, they'd either cut them off or do away with the situation. Because people would come in and say, they'd hear, well, you need to talk to staff, or in your guys' case, firefighter says, well, you need to go talk to your lieutenant or your captain or whatever. Well, what if they're the problem? Right? Who are you gonna go to? And if they're afraid to go to a chief, well, for crying out loud, he's the kingfish. So then they figure, well, my only option is to go talk to a city council member, maybe they can do something. And I'm not gonna get into any names or whatever, but I know that environment exists. And I think that's something more important than some of the other things. I think that's gotta be right on the top. Other than that, Jerry, definitely an in-depth report.
The, when we talk about opportunities, I think when everybody looks at the survey and they say, I'm not the only one that thinks that, then we can start to come to solutions on how are we gonna fix this, right? And all of us have our own responsibility for our own morale, but the organization has several people in it that are creating contention. And I can't talk about personnel issues here, but that's one of the solutions we need to look at. And the firefighters are aware of that too.
You're right, morale, that's the word I was looking for.
Morale, there you go,
You don't have morale,
yeah.
and especially in that kind of a field. I mean, you're going into somebody's house on fire to save somebody and you don't even know them.
Mhm.
And you're being asked to do it, and then you come back and somebody goes, oh, you could have done that better. Well, maybe I could have, but there's ways to explain that. Debrief, we used to call it debriefing. I don't know if they do
Yeah,
that
they
here or not.
They do it much more than we ever did. So,
All right,
I believe Bob's the only person on the dais up here who's had military training as well, and if you don't feel you can, you can trust the person next to you to
Right.
help save your life, that's the worst situation. Brian, what have you?
Well, this, I think, provides a lot of insight to the fire department and things that can be improved. And I'm sure once that they have time to go through it, digest it, and come up with their solutions and how to improve the fire department, that can be presented to council. But like what you touched on, we need accountability, and this needs to come from the top down, and the top is the city council. On page 26, we have internal communications, where several firefighters expressed concern about the city council micromanaging and felt that the liaison to the fire department has been less engaged than in previous years. How can we solve some of these things?
how can you sell them?
How can we solve?
Oh, solve them, yeah, that's where the communication plan comes in. I heard about the liaison position, cause I asked about it, what's the role of the liaison? And, how does it communicate information up and down the chain of the needs of the fire department? And, the discussion, I don't know who the previous liaison was, but there was discussion that the liaison was, at every training and was at every event and so on. But again, time is money for you all too, and you can't be at every meeting when you're a council member and a liaison. But we solve it with good expectations, and it starts, so what are you expecting of your fire department for your community, and it resonates down, right? And I think a lot of this stuff, especially related to the leadership training and teamwork development and just everybody understanding, we had really good discussion and training with them, that a lot of stuff happens on the floor. And Bob, you'll know this because I served too. But we took care of a lot of stuff on the floor. And we recognized that we weren't going to go talk to our superiors. We were going to say, this is how our department rolls right here on the floor. And we just didn't allow some of that. We just didn't allow it. You tend to normalize it over time. But I'm hoping that we can hit a reset with this now. This is why these are valuable. And we're connected, so you can make a phone call, but we can now start to say, okay, here's where we're at. How are we gonna get it in a direction so that we can keep this model, keep retention, keep recruitment, and have a fire department who really likes coming here. And as I said, in the survey, the majority said they love being here and they're gonna stay here.
So would it be a good idea for the fire liaison to attend at least one training session per month in the quarterly meetings?
I think the more the liaison can sort of, probably the bigger picture would be for the council to have a meeting with the firefighters and talk about expectations and the fire department, and, you know, you can have a workshop where you can hear from the firefighters, but, most of those comments related to the micromanaging and so on are related to the liaison of the past and, what they used to do compared to what's happening now. There is discussion about the council getting engaged in some of the personnel issues, which some don't feel they had. And then keep in mind, you know, half the staff are fairly new. So a lot of them won't even wanna say anything, you know, because they're just new to this and they're trying to figure it out. So your 8-year and above are probably where a lot of the, you know, experienced comments are coming from.
Well, just to touch on the liaison, because I was the liaison my first couple of years, way back. The liaison position is to act as a conduit between the fire department and the city. It's not to get so engaged with the fire department that you become one, or think you are one,
Right.
and think you have all the privileges and whatnot, because I think if that happens, there becomes too much of a bias. And when you come up here, whether you're with Parks, Planning Commission, whatever, you're supposed to have a somewhat open mind, you know what the commissions have discussed, you know what their hopes, and it's not, I mean, I don't think they should be a lobbyist. I really don't. I think because you get too close, and then you don't think.
Right.
And I think that's what happened. Now, the current liaison, I mean, he goes to the meetings, what I know. I didn't feel that I should go to every single training, because then I thought, well, geez, you know, they think I'm watching them.
Yeah, right.
And I don't think that should be.
All of this stuff is a balancing act. All of life is a balancing act.
Yes.
So, and that my comments at the outset that this was our duty as a city council was specifically addressing that micromanaging comment. Because if past city councils did not do their due diligence, that doesn't mean we shouldn't. Okay, and if it irks people because we're actually paying attention, because we have to manage the residents' money. I mean, the residents are people paying the $1 million a year. So we have an obligation to do what we're doing. My concern, or not really a concern, a question, was more about how the first recommendation began an aggressive recruitment campaign, which I agree with, because I have heard from a number of people, it's just the number of calls are exhausting.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're gonna keep the 30% good standing, it's a lot of calls.
Yeah.
And it's, and balancing that with number 5, modify your medical response plan to critical incidents only, which I've advocated before without any reception to the idea. But I understand that it's funny. At first I thought, well, if you have a lot more people, it should, but you're going to reduce the number of calls. I mean, one seems to take care of the other kind of thing. But then I realized something else. For a while, I was on the East Bethel Fire Department trustee or trust association, whatever the correct term is. And we, in the past year, increased the benefit per year of duty from $6,000 to $7,500. And so now my question changes, and it's, if you do both these things, okay, let's say we get it up to 40 or the ultimate 50 members of the East Bethel Fire Department, and you wouldn't even need to have a 30%, you could have like a 20 or 25% maybe duty rating and cover all the need if you're reducing the number of calls you're making. Would the pension impact be, now you've, you know, significantly increased the pension obligation of the city, or the state fund, however you want to put it. Do you understand what I'm getting
Yeah,
at?
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. You only get 2% of your insurance premiums. So, the pool will get diluted
Yeah,
or
that's what I'm wondering
Yeah.
about.
yeah. But the pension benefit since the 1950s has been here to keep people here
Yeah,
as a benefit. If you take the annual hourly rate, I put in 200 hours at this rate equals this, plus the pension, and divide it by that same 200 hours, you get a different hourly rate than what you see on the paycheck. Does that make sense?
reiterate it, please.
Okay. So we got a number of columns. Everybody's
Yep.
name's on one. I'll go
Yep.
this way. Column, how much they make an hour, how many hours they went on a year, equals this much, right? That's the total. Now we add in the pension fund, 7,500 a year. And that then gets divided by those same 200 hours. You now get to see the hourly rate that these firefighters make, because everybody gets the $7,500.
Well, let me ask you something. It seems to me there's something missing in the pension formula, and that would be, let's say this person makes 50% of the calls. This person over here makes 30, that person over there makes 80%, but they all get the same pension payout.
I agree.
That seems to be a missing piece of the
I
formula.
agree.
So it should be an experience rating, or a participation rating, however you want to phrase it, would be
I've al-
part of,
Yeah.
you've
I've always-
advocated
yeah,
for that,
it-
haven't
It
you?
should be an incentive to go to more calls, you get more.
Yeah,
pension.
yeah.
Yeah, but the chief does monitor all of the people who are not meeting good standing, and if you don't make good standing, you don't get credit.
Yeah.
So every year, he has to say to the Relief Association, these people get 100% credit for the year, these people get 75, these get 50.
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
But the fire service model for you has to grow. 31 people is a lot of people for 1,033 calls.
It is,
Yeah.
it is. Well, I thank you I know we all appreciate the work you've done, and we needed this, because, I mean, Jim has fire department experience, and so does Tim,
Yeah.
over in his hometown in Wisconsin, and Bob has EMS.
Mhm.
But Brian and I, as far as I know, don't have any fire department experience, and it's,
I was a liaison in my last term.
well, I mean, on fire.
Yeah, not
Active
on
duty,
file, but-
out in the field, actually doing it, and I haven't done that. So we needed that objective opinion, and you came highly rated. And since then, I've had other people tell me how much, including a former deputy fire chief and fire chief, told me how highly he regards your experience and your professionalism. So we appreciate it.
Yes. And know that I'm available after today, so he has my number. He said he's gonna beat me in pool someday.
Yeah, he can do it. Well, he can beat me easy enough anyway.
But if there's any questions related to this, get in touch with me. And we can.
Yeah, we will.
And
We'll
the
follow
fire-
up.
From the fire chief and the fire department as well.
Yeah, we'll follow up.
Yep.
That's really not part of the meeting set up tonight. I mean, if you want to come up to the public forum, you can do that, but this was just for our benefit and the watching public. So,
Mr. Mayor, if I can just make a couple of comments.
sure.
I recently attended a conference, and one of the statements that really stuck out to me was a gentleman who said that he came from a business background, and he said, "You cannot afford to have a bad day." And what he meant by that was your day could be coming apart, wheels falling off, and your phone rings, and you got to bury that, pick up your phone and answer it and be professional. You cannot afford to relay that anger onto whoever your customer is and lose your customer, whatever the case is. You can't afford to do that. And we have here a workplace policy. We have a lot of, I think, some of the concerns that have been addressed in that policy as to respectfulness and harassment, fairness, and things of that nature. And I think we need to
We need to definitely refresh ourselves maybe on some of those things, make sure that we're following that. And the reason for this is because we are all on the same team. We're on the same team. And the team is a service to the East Bethel residents. That's what it is. And we can't afford not to work together. Matter of fact, it's incumbent upon us to work together.
Yeah.
And that goal is a goal that I have after reading this report to make sure that we're doing that and encouraging folks to do that. So I thank Jerry for his comprehensive report. I know some of it might be uncomfortable, but it's a report that hasn't been done maybe in quite a few years, if at all.
Ever.
And I think it at least gives some insight and helps people kind of understand maybe some of their blind sides. Everyone has them. Everybody has them. And so understanding that and then understanding how you can better yourself and for the purpose of bettering the organization, I think is something that's invaluable. So that's, I think that's one of the benefits of doing this, and I want to thank yourself, Mayor, and the council for hiring Mr. Strike and for the report that we have here and the work that we can do to improve ourselves. So.
And also all the members of the fire department who participated in it.
Yeah.
To make their fire department the best it can be.
Yeah, and they understand it.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jerry.
Okay, the next item on our agenda, item 4B, is the Anoka County Sheriff's Office with Lieutenant Derek Peters. How are you, sir?
Fantastic. Thank
Always
you, Mayor.
fantastic.
Yeah, always fantastic.
That's excellent.
I'm doing well, and I hope you all are as well. So September had a total of 462 calls for service for us, which was our second busiest month all year. We had 1 burglary, 6 thefts, and 2 damage to property calls that we handled. We made a total of 33 custodial arrests for miscellaneous offenses, and we performed 150 traffic stops on our city roads, which resulted in the issuance of 39 traffic citations, which is on par for what we've seen all year. A couple of our notable calls, on the 2nd of September at 4:15 p.m., one of our newest deputies, Deputy Martinez, stopped a passenger car in the 3900 block of Viking Boulevard Northeast for erratic driving conduct. While speaking with the driver, he noticed that the driver smelled of an alcoholic beverage and was having a hard time following simple instructions to produce his license and proof of insurance. Deputy Martinez had the driver step out to perform standardized field sobriety testing, which he did and ultimately failed. The driver provided a preliminary breath sample, which indicated a very high reading of .312. The driver was arrested and transported to the sheriff's office, where he later submitted to a DMT test, which reported a value of .24. Having no prior convictions, the driver was booked into jail on charges of 3rd-degree gross misdemeanor DWI. So a good one for us to get off of the road there for sure.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
Fortunately, I've never gained knowledge about this particular topic, but is 3rd degree, like your blood alcohol is extra high, so that's 3rd degree? So is that how they measure it?
Yep, over twice the legal limit would automatically trigger the gross misdemeanor charge of 3rd-degree DWI.
That's a gross misdemeanor.
Yep, a gross misdemeanor. Anything below that without any priors would be just a 4th-degree misdemeanor DWI.
Okay.
So
Thank you. I've always wondered about that. I just never asked.
yeah, there's a lot to it that we cover in the training manual, and it takes some time to get used to it. But once you kind of figure it out, the laws are written in a way to prevent that recidivism. We want people to stop doing that, so the penalties are going to increase the more intoxicated you are and the more times you have an incident. So the day after that, on the 3rd, at 7:27 p.m., Deputy Seafolk was dispatched to a burglary report at an address in the 24300 block of Highway 65. The reporting party stated that a female who had been evicted by our civil division from her residence the week prior had been caught on a recording entering the home. Deputy Seafolk spoke with the reporting party, who provided video of this female entering the home and showed him the damaged deadbolt from the door having been forced open. Our deputies determined that the female, who was no longer at the location, should be arrested for assault, trespassing, and damage to property. Deputies checked the area but were initially unable to locate her. A few hours later, we received a call to check the welfare of this female at a nearby location, unrelated. On arrival, they arrested her on probable cause charges and attempted to take a statement from her. The female did admit to entering the home in violation of the eviction order. She was later transported to jail and booked on the applicable crimes above. On the 9th of September, at 2:37 p.m., Deputy Quam responded to an open 911 line near the area of Lever Street and East Front Boulevard. Information provided to our deputies responding to this location stated that a male could be heard in the background of this open 911 line saying, "I see the 5-0, good thing we are only doing 50 miles per hour." We arrived in the area and began following a car which our deputies believe was responsible and associated with this open 911 line. A short time later, Deputy Quam did stop the car for driving on the wrong side of a residential street. Deputy Quam contacted a male and a female inside of the car who were unable to provide any proof of insurance on the car. Deputy Quam later learned that the male passenger had provided a false name and had several outstanding warrants from Dakota, Mille Lacs, and Scott counties. The male was transported to jail for the warrants, and the female was issued a citation for obstructing the legal process, which is basically obstructing our investigation roadside. And then finally on the 24th, Deputy Quam again stopped a car on the 3200 block of Viking Boulevard for a vehicle that registered to a revoked driver. As he approached the car, the driver immediately told Deputy Quam that he had a felony warrant out of our county for a weapons violation, but that he wouldn't cause any issues for him. Deputy Quam took the male into custody without incident, confirmed that warrant. The driver was transported to jail and booked on the warrant and driving after cancellation. So busy month. With Halloween later this week, for everybody that's watching, everybody in the public here, visibility is key when we're out trick-or-treating on Thursday. Traffic is usually high in the residential areas. People are bringing kids in from all over the place trick-or-treating kind of. In some of the tightly packed neighborhoods that I live in, we definitely see a great increase in foot traffic and vehicle traffic as well. So if you can, wear some lighted clothing, wear some of those high-vis chem lights, things like that help. Travel in groups and be familiar with the route that anybody is going to be taking, and don't rely on passing vehicles to stop for you. They're usually, like I said before, with the kids that they're taking around these neighborhoods, and they're kind of following along. So wishing everyone a safe and happy Halloween, and I'll stand for any questions if we have any.
Thank you very much.
Derek, I got a question, like, on the assaults part, 2024 is like 44 versus 19 on 2023. Anything that you can come up with what's going on there?
Yeah, our juvenile assaults at Nexus
Really?
is gonna
That's where
it's gonna drive that number very high. And like I said, I think I mentioned it before at an earlier meeting. These are the challenges that staff face, that we usually are the last resort, and I think in time, if they can get this, if they can get those protocols in place and get their training up to where it needs to be, we're gonna see a sharp decline in those numbers. That's my hope, so.
Has there been a follow-up meeting since the one we all had out there?
No, I have not been out there to speak with them since we met, I don't know, I think it was a month ago maybe.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken. So.
Do we need to do anything to let them know that we were serious about what we were talking about?
I don't think so. I do speak with them often. When we have concerns, I call. A lot of those meetings are not face-to-face, very quick. It's just confirming some details on some of the things that I read in the reports, and then me just inquiring exactly what are we doing to fix these things. So,
Yeah.
And they always seem to have an answer. And like I said before, staff is great to work with. I think the challenge is very steep for them.
Yeah.
So like Derek, with the 44, could a bunch of them just be one person from
Yep.
Nexus?
That's possible too. So you have one resident, one client that's in there, and they hit one person here, one person there, one person there. It's a separate behavioral incident. They'll be charged 3 different times.
That's quite an increase.
Yeah?
Do we have any updates on that problem area where they were camping in the backyard yet?
Yeah, I think I talked to Corey 2 weeks ago, Corey Jorgensen, 3 weeks ago maybe now. He said it was quieted, which I'm glad to hear. We've made 3 arrests over the last 2 months out of there, so that was good. 3 custodial arrests, and that doesn't include any sort of other enforcement action that we've taken. So I haven't heard anything. I haven't had that in-depth update from any members of the public, but I know what my staff's doing. I've got a big board in my office now where I can kind of see where everybody's at. So we are still working that area. It's on our radar.
So, for next month's meeting, would you be able to have a in-depth report on that to provide that to Mr. Look so that he can send that to council so that we can get a good idea what's going on there?
Yep.
By the way, I might as well do it now, you're standing right there. Today is National First Responders Day. I meant to say that at the very outset of the meeting, I apologize. And so, for yourself and for Rod and his crew at the fire department, the EMS folks are from Align and all. If you see them around town, say thanks. They do very important work, and we appreciate it.
Yeah, we've got a couple in the crowd here tonight, so thank you guys.
Yeah,
Thank you for saying so.
sure. Thanks for the report.
Thank you. I can't
Well, you can
ahead.
go out in the hall with him and ask him a question.
Okay.
Okay, next item on the list is the East Bethel Fire Department monthly report with Chief Senow.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I want to first start off by saying thank you to Jerry Strike for doing the
Yeah.
report. Like you said, 80% was pretty good on the response and that.
Yeah.
And we have already started working on some of those issues
Good.
he's brought up.
Good
And
deal.
that, so with that, like I said, we'll continue to work on them. I got to meet with my officers to start getting a plan. They did not get the full report until yesterday when I emailed it out to them.
Oh,
So they have not had the chance to look at it. So for the month of September, we responded to 81 calls. 60 of those were medicals, 5 accidents, 2 fires, and 7 alarms. As of 7 o'clock tonight, we responded to 863 calls for service so far this year, compared to 774 from last year. Our current trend, as Jerry had said, is going to put us right around 1,033 in that. And then just some reminders, with the heating season approaching, have your furnace checked to make sure that the proper working order. Also check the CO detectors to make sure they're working properly. On Saturday, there was an incident in a neighboring city where 3 people were taken to the hospital with CO poisoning. So make sure your vents are all clear from the birds making nest or hornets nest in there over the summer. All 3 of those people are doing fine, but it was, like I said, it was in a
Good.
neighboring city. With the change of clocks this weekend, it's a good reminder to change your batteries on the smoke detectors. Even though they're hardwired, most likely all of them are battery backup somehow, and you need to change them unless they're the 10-year sealed batteries. So if they're that, after 10 years, you just throw them away, and those detector and everything. The lack of rain has created seriously dry conditions for the grass around the area. Be careful with the fires you may have and make sure they're completely out before leaving them. According to the DNR website, we are in a restricted burning area, which means there's no burning permits being given out. The only fires that are allowed are rec fires at this time, which, as a reminder, is a 3 by 3 by 3, 3 feet wide, 3 feet, 3 and 3 feet high. That's all you can have. And that, do not burn leaves or garden debris. It is prohibited material from burning. That's according to the DNR website. These materials can be composted. Either compost them in your own yard or look on the Anoka County website to find the compost sites. As Lieutenant Peters said, Halloween is Thursday. Drive careful. When you're out there from 5:30 to 8, most likely that's going to be the busiest times. There'll be a lot of kids out there and they don't always check before they run across the street to get to the other house. There'll also be a lot of four-wheelers pulling trailers, so watch for them also. On a note to that, if I can get enough volunteers, I do believe the fire department is going to go into with our smaller trucks, or we're gonna go into the neighborhoods and hand out the densely populated neighborhoods. We're not gonna go to every neighborhood, we're just gonna go to them higher density neighborhoods and hand out candy. So if I can get enough volunteers to do that. And then with deer opener coming, take the extra time when climbing into your tree stand to make sure your firearm's unloaded. And always check to where you're shooting, make sure there's nothing behind you. And with that, I'll take any questions.
I have a question, and it's about what Jerry was talking about. It was about reducing, let me see, his recommendation number 5, modify your medical response plan to critical incidents only. And he mentioned that we have a data, is that Troy that he was talking about, as far as the data analyst within the
Troy
department?
could probably pull it up. Actually, on,
That's what I'm getting at, is do we have the raw data that we could?
actually, on that, no, because everything that we put into image trend is always coded as a 321, which is a medical call.
Oh, really?
Yes. I can look on First Due, which is our
Well,
other.
how would we, then it gets to how would we implement that if we said, yeah, we want to do that?
Yeah, we could go to Anoka County Dispatch, and they have some different coding and that that they could put in, and then we could decide what it is you want to and don't want to. But with that being said, the information that we're given is only as good as the information that's being given to the dispatcher.
Sure, yeah.
So, we, a year or two ago, we had a person that we were called for a fall. Well, he fell because he had a heart attack.
Yeah.
So we were responding routine to that call. And when the deputy got on scene, he went in there and said, oh man, we need to start CPR. So that's where we are hesitant to screen our calls based on stuff like that.
Well,
You
yeah,
know,
I mean,
because
that-
like I
that-
said, it's
that
only
also
as
gets
good
to
as
where you have to depend on the other people and,
you have to
in the
depend on the
chain, yeah.
person who's calling
yeah,
to give you decent information.
yeah.
Or that, not us,
Oh, absolutely.
not
yeah.
2800 or dispatch or line and the dispatching. They
Yeah.
all have to count on
Yeah.
that, you know.
Yeah. I was just wondering about where we stood as far as implementing something, not a huge list of things you wouldn't call on, but just some.
Yeah.
And
And we're
if it-
starting to do something. We're reducing calls
It's
down
like
by.
triage. It's only triage of the
Yeah.
calls you go on.
Yeah, we're reducing calls down by sending duty officers only. Like for Nexus, is a duty officer only call.
Yeah.
And that, and then we'll upgrade if needed.
Just all
But-
about optimizing use
Yep.
of the resources, that's all.
And
it's about.
that, I need to get some numbers together, but just off my head right now, for a night responder out of Station 1 or 2, they're actually only, the do 30%. That's 30%. They actually only have to respond to 6 calls a month. Our day people, they have to respond to 12 calls a month. That's just to do 30% in that. Because the 1,000 calls, no one's responsible for all 1,000 calls.
Oh, no, no.
The only responsibilities for me is to make sure I have somebody there.
And we do want more because what I have heard from some people, like when we were all at the fire department the last time, Fire Station 1,
Yeah.
was that it's a strain when you have a family, when you have elderly parents and whatnot, and the things of life, to have a lot of calls. And like he said, they want to be there. They want to help.
Yep.
But so it's stressful even if they're not able to go on the call themselves.
But like I said, if I can get the numbers together, I do have a running of what each person's responsible up to. I have to put these 2 calls in. But right now, our nighttime responders are right about 250 calls that they're responsible. So they only have to do 30% of those 250 calls.
Right.
So,
Okay.
and yeah, you could miss a
Well,
weekend.
that's good. It's a little less stress.
Yes.
Yeah.
You could miss a weekend where your station is gonna get hammered,
Yeah.
and then you're behind on percentage. So now you have to look at a way to make it up. You're gonna be going when you don't wanna go, but in that, so, but 30%, I do hold people accountable for 30%.
Well, to segue off of that, where did the 30% come from?
It's basically a standard across the city. It's either 25 to 30% percentage in that. It's just, you gotta have something to base your pension off of. Because if you say, okay, you're gonna give a guy $7,500 a year, and he only comes as 10% of the calls, is that really, you
It's
know?
not fair.
Did he earn it?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
not fairness.
fair to the person that's doing 70%.
Right.
Well, I guess I don't know if it was an issue or a question. Being 30%, some people in a voluntary department with as few firefighters as we have, and to say, well, you gotta make 30% or minimum or you're done, basically. Well, aren't we pushing people out the door? I mean, can't that, just as a recruiting thing,
To answer-
figure out some kind of a system?
Answer that question, there's never been anybody fired for percentages.
Well, I gotta ask.
Our policy, you have four chances, and they have to be 4 in a row. There's no one that has ever went 4 in a row below 30%.
All right.
Okay? So, and also at the 30% of pension, let's say a person does 25% one quarter, because we go by the quarter, we don't go monthly, we go by the quarter. And they have a chance to make it up the next quarter by doing 35, they get 30, they get the credit for the whole year. Or they get the credit for the quarter they missed, as long as they make it up the following quarter. If they don't make it up, yes, then they don't get credit for 3 months.
Well, give the scenario like Kevin said, you know, maybe somebody's got some older folks living with them. It's a bad month. I mean, I guess if it were me, I'd take my family over. I
Yes.
hate to
and-
say it, but.
Yeah, like I said, we do that. And if it's, like I said, they get a chance to make it up the following quarter. We don't do monthly, we do quarter. So every 3 months is how we run our 30%. So you could have 5% the first month, it's just that you have to make it up in the next 2 months. If you choose not to respond to anything in the first month, that's fine. You still have to make it up or get a bad quarter if you don't make it up the following month or quarter.
All right.
Any other questions for Rod?
Yeah, Rod, we met last year about talking about getting the firefighters a raise. And when we talked about that budget, when we came up to the firehouse, we'd like to redo that again and sit down and see if we've found any creative ways to make sure this is happening. Because I don't want to just keep talking about trying to find a raise for these guys. I want to try and find a raise for these guys.
Okay, they are going to get 3.5% this year. That'll bring the firefighter 3, which is the highest paid ones, just about to $20 an hour.
Okay.
In that. Then you also, then your probationary firefighters, they start at $15.63 right now. So that 3.5%, I can't do math real quick, but that puts them somewhere right around $16. And as they finish their classes, they get moved up in progression. To get to Fire 3, you have to do another 150 hours beyond Fire 2, or on your firefighting, Fire 1, Fire 2 hazmat and pumps. Now you have to do another 150 hours of some type of officer or some kind of leadership classes. That's where we're getting in to get to our firefighter 3 level and that. So we have probably half our firefighters are at the Fire 3 level.
Okay.
In that.
Well, that's good.
Yep. So.
Any other questions, guys? Comments?
No, just thanks for
Thank
all
you,
you do.
Chief.
Thank you. And I'll hang out for the bill list in case unless somebody has a question on it right now. And that, any question on any of the bills I have on there? Otherwise, I go back down.
I didn't have any. I don't know about you guys.
I try to catch my firefighters before they leave from training.
Well, as far as I know, you're good to go.
Okay, thank you guys. Have a good night and have a safe Halloween.
You
Thanks,
too, thank you.
too. Thanks again, Lieutenant Peters. Thank you. Okay, that brings us to item 5, which is the public forum. Has anyone signed up?
Yes.
Tammy Gimple.
Tammy Gimple, you know where I.
Yeah, can you put your microphone closer?
Tammy Gimple. Okay, for one, we've always let the public ask questions. I don't know, is it just because it's me?
No.
Or is it, I mean, why would you treat public that way? I get it, you're counsel, but
No, we're trying to conduct a meeting.
Right.
It's not a free-for-all, whoever shows up.
it
We
wasn't
change
a
the meeting.
free-for-all.
We change the meeting format to everybody who
I
shows up.
know that the public has asked Derek Peters questions and it's been allowed. I know they've asked the fire chief questions even.
Anyway,
Just
you're up
ask
here
them.
now in the public forum and it's 3
I'm
minutes.
just saying that.
Well, you can complain about anything, Tammy.
I wasn't complaining, I'm asking why you would treat somebody that way.
Well, that sounds like complaining. Anyway,
Anyway,
do you?
okay, so that active 911, we just heard Jerry Strike say that that was confidential data, that is the duty of the chief to take care of that, where is that sitting with you guys? Because I know.
I don't know. Does anybody else know?
Mr. Mayor and Council, the information that was transmitted to a private resident and then put on Facebook was in fact not private information. It was a kind of a cut, paste, or cut kind of image.
It was like a screenshot, wasn't it?
Right, like a
Yeah.
screenshot, so it was not private information.
And we know that for
looked
sure.
at it,
so
I
it's-
read it. But it brought up the bigger issue of if it is private information, this can't ever happen again, type of scenario.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Okay,
Does that
that-
answer your
what
question?
I-
No,
what I
what
should-
do you mean it isn't private information? Active 911 is a private app.
I think
So-
the confusion is that First Due is private, complete
No.
private.
Active 911 is a private act.
Okay.
That the public can't get it.
A lot of the information on Active 911, Mr. Mayor, I'll talk with you as opposed to her, is very similar to the prior app. I forget the name of that one. Perhaps you remember. But at any rate, very similar information to that the public can get access to on a regular basis. And you would find that the information on this screenshot was identical to what they could get on Pulse Point, I believe is the name of it. So.
Okay, but it was an active 911 app that went out to the public.
It was a screenshot.
Correct.
Yeah.
Which is someone on the fire department sent it to somebody to post. It was still a private app from the fire department that went out publicly. I mean, twisting it doesn't make it it doesn't make it okay.
I'm sorry, Tammy, don't talk to me about it. You're addressing the council at this
You were
point.
talking to me, you're looking at
And
me.
that's why I
you-
said I'm trying to address the council at this point.
Wow, okay, so moving on, so it's nowhere, is that?
Okay, so remember the rules, 3 minutes, and so it's already like 4.5, 5. So can you kind of move it along, please? You're the only person on the public forum tonight, so we're gonna cut you slack, but please,
Okay,
focus.
so comparing what Jerry had for his report, if you go compare Ham Lake to East Bethel, and Ham Lake is probably the most comparable, those medicals that you could cut down, Ham Lake has almost 17,000 people. They have 360 some calls because they do only the critical. And you can do that very easily through communications, so dispatch. Dispatch would have a list, they can do it, it's not, that is easily done as much as
Okay,
the chief thought it wasn't, so.
okay. Well, I
The
hope
other
that's-
thing I'd
I
have,
hope that's true. That's what I'd like, yeah.
the conflict, I mean, I know it was glossed over, like, I know you said this is a cool city and it's cool, and all the stuff he went through, but he was hired because there's conflict in the fire department, and he did gloss over the 85 or 4% bullying and that sort of thing, and the conflict. To do retention and recruitment and bring people, new people into a place that is in conflict that way, with people feeling bullied, people are bullied from the top down. So the leadership is bad. Bringing in classes, having classes, and I know he said it was a change in leadership. It's been 2.5 years that he's been here. And I don't know who asked about the qualifications inside of their folders. That should be looked at very closely and starting from the top. That's, I can say it over and over, he wasn't qualified, he's not qualified. He's proving it himself. And that's the only way you're going to change that. Bringing in people to something that is already in conflict is not going to keep recruitment or retention. And we have one station. We have 2 substations. I don't know how you're going to fit 15 people at Station 3. And to make it safe, you at least need to have an extractor at Station 2. Make it safe for them before we bring in more people. That's, I can say more. I mean, he was hired, everything that was in that report should have been done, could have been done by a qualified fire chief. And I mean, it's right in his job description and position. We pay him $120,000 a year.
Okay, okay.
Okay, and
So
you're gonna bump
can
my
you-
time.
What?
Go ahead,
I'm gonna what?
go ahead. You're gonna
Yeah.
throw me out is what I was saying.
What? No, I'm just saying, is there any more?
I have a
I
lot
was-
more, but that's,
Well,
Mr. Mayor,
you wanna wrap it up, or what?
Mr. Mayor, perhaps if Ms. Gimple wants to put this in writing, she can submit it to me and I'll make sure it's distributed to the council and make sure that you guys are aware
Well, we
of
do
all our
have the
comments.
earlier, remember the white folders you gave to us? We still have those, and,
Okay.
you know, we've read them.
did you read the email I sent?
I read that.
Okay,
Yeah.
the
Formal
email-
complaint, the
the
one
formal
entitled formal
complaint,
complaint,
yes.
yeah. Yeah, we do
Okay.
pay attention to stuff,
Okay.
yeah, we do.
All due respect, I respect you guys. I just don't think that we should be treated that way. And as far as what's going on at the fire department, obviously, it's very near and dear to me.
I know.
And I would prefer it were safe to those guys and not they be bullied. 84%, that should be, that's alarming. That's
I know.
alarming. And to bring in new people, to have 84% of them already feel bullied, you're
Well,
gonna have more problems.
we haven't said the matter is all
I
complete and ended.
understand.
We just wanted an independent party to do an assessment, give us their appraisal, and they did that, and we accepted it tonight and paid him. And that's good, and that's one step in a process. So thank you for your input.
Thank
And
you.
we know, we respect you too. We know you have a firefighter's, a lot of years' experience. We do respect that, just so you know.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, and Councilmember Mundell already added an amendment to it. We agreed to that when we adopted our agenda for the meeting tonight, and that was to add payment of the Capstone LLC bill to the approved bills list. And so we're in good order. Our parliamentarian is giving me the nod, so.
So I'd make a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion? Like pulling items? Well, that's a first.
Seize the moment, Mayor.
What's that?
Let's quick vote on it before anybody can.
Yeah, seize the moment, that's what you said.
Yes.
Okay, I will seize the moment. All in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none heard. Okay. I sense that Mr. Berg's gonna be talking at us pretty soon. Item 7 on our agenda is new business. And 7A is Planning Commission, and the first item is variance request. Aaron,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council.
just to properly introduce you for folks who can't see your name tag there, Aaron is the East Bethel Community Development Director.
Thank you. Thanks again, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. This is a variance request for the placement of a detached accessory structure nearer the front lot line than the primary structure. The applicant's property is located in the Oak Ridge Acres development and within a single-family R1 zoning district. The applicant's property is 3 acres in size. However, over 1 acre of the rear yard is wetlands, lowlands, or a platted drainage and utility easement, as well as an easement for overhead utility lines. The property owner is requesting a variance for the placement of a detached accessory structure closer to the street than the primary structure due to the drainage utility easement, in addition to the septic location on the property. I'm not going to bore you with the zoning code. As you know, this one doesn't meet the standard to have the garage placed in front of the house. That's why they're asking for a variance. The consideration of a variance requires the consideration of a 3-factor test for practical difficulty. The first one is reasonableness, which means the landowner would likely use the property in a practical way but cannot do so under the rules of the ordinance. In this case, the property owner is requesting to build a detached accessory structure in which she may keep lawn equipment and general storage. This use is listed as an accessory use approved in a single-family R1 zoning district. The second factor is that the landowner's problem is due to circumstances unique to the property and not caused by the landowner. Excuse me. In this case, the property is unique in that it is divided in half by an 80-foot wide overhead power line utility easement, which is located behind the primary residence. The rear yard contains a 0.75 acre wetland or lowland platted drainage and utility easement, which covers multiple properties throughout this development. There are also topographical challenges limiting the placement and orientation of a newly proposed detached accessory structure. On top of the lot being wooded, it has a 10-foot elevation change from the front lot line to the 10-foot overhead utility easement line. In addition, the septic drain field is located directly south of the primary residence in the area in line with or behind the front line foundation of the primary residence. The third factor is that the variance would not alter the essential character of this neighborhood. The proposed structure would be replace a temporary tarp building, which does not meet city code standards. The proposed detached accessory structure would not encroach on any other required setbacks. The construction of the newly detached accessory structure will provide an enclosed structure in which the property owner can store personal property, screening all items from adjacent properties, which is required by code, and standing tree growth between the proposed detached accessory structure and the front property line will aid in screening it from the right view of the public right-of-way. On October 22nd, the Planning Commission held a public hearing, which there was no public comment. After a review of the material and hearing from the applicant, the Planning Commission, by a 4-0 vote, recommended approval of the variance for the placement of a detached accessory structure nearer the front lot line than the primary structure, with conditions in Resolution 2024-71. City Council should review the request, the Planning Commission's formal recommendation, and consider approving the variance as presented in 2024-71.
Thank you, Aaron. Anybody have any questions or comments?
Aaron, what size structure are they talking?
She wants to put a 24 by 24. So this drawing I completed for the applicant, and that is to scale to the house. So the red 24 by 24 is the proposed location of the building. This is the septic drain field and the tank just south of the house. Here is the driveway. As you can see, there is no possible way for her to place a building behind the front line of the house without putting it into the drainage utility easement or the overhead utility easement. In addition, I have the elevations map here where you can see near the cul-de-sac on the street is about 916 feet above sea level, And before you get to the drainage, or the overhead utility easement, it drops to about 906, which is a 10-foot elevation change over probably 75 yards, which would make it nearly impossible unless she was doing a walkout.
Right. I know I was out there today and I took a look at it, and you can't hardly even tell where she's got the existing plastic thing now. So,
Yep.
I mean, I feel that's the only place that she could put it. And personally, I don't have a problem with it.
I move we, now, I'm looking at resolution 2024-37, but that's the denial. Where's the
71.
accepting one?
Dash 71.
71.
All right, I move to approve resolution 2024-71.
Approve.
Variance.
Second.
That'd be granting the variance. Any further conversation? All in favor of approving resolution number 2024-71, granting this variance, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None heard. The next item on the agenda is another variance request for 4806 239th Avenue Northeast, about sidewall heights.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, members of the council, on September 25th of 2024, the city received a variance application from Mr. Flagstead, who wishes to build a 36 by 60 detached accessory building at his property at 4806 239th Avenue Northeast. Mr. Flagstead's property is 4.66 acres in size and is in the rural residential zoning district of the city. Zoning code would allow Mr. Flagstead an accessory building as large as 2,850 square feet in size. The proposed detached accessory structure would fall below the maximum building size requirement for a detached accessory structure. However, Mr. Flagstead would like to increase the sidewall height from 14 feet to 16 feet to install an overhead door high enough for him to get his camper inside, and therefore is requesting a 2-foot variance. Mr. Flagstead met with city staff and was advised that current detached accessory structure regulations increase the sidewall height from 14 feet to 14 feet, and that the city has not granted variances for sidewall heights higher than 14 feet, and the previous applicants have utilized vaulted trusses in order to achieve higher overhead door heights. Mr. Flagstead wants the extra height to afford him the opportunity to place 2 taller overhead doors side by side on the front of the detached accessory building. Staff verbally denied Mr. Flagstead's original building permit request, but did tell him that he had the option to apply for a variance. Between 2014 and 2020, the Planning Commission and the City Council reviewed and made multiple revisions to detached accessory structure regulations, including sidewall heights. Raising sidewall heights for detached accessory buildings from 10 feet to 12 feet and from 12 feet to 14 feet in all residential districts of the city over this time. City staff were unable to locate the approval of any variances for detached accessory structure sidewall height after 2020, when the increase of 14 feet came into effect. To hear requests for variances from the literal provisions of the ordinance in instances where their strict enforcement would cause practical difficulties because of the circumstances unique to the individual property under consideration, and to grant such variance only when it is demonstrated that such actions will be in keeping with the spirit and the intent of the ordinance. Practical difficulties also used in connection with the granting of a variance means that the property owner's purpose to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by an official control. The plight of the landowner is due to circumstances unique to the property, not created by the landowner, and the variance, if granted, would not alter the essential character of the locality. Economic considerations alone do not constitute a practical difficulty. The consideration of a variance requires the consideration of a 3-factor test of practical difficulty. The first factor is a test of reasonableness, which means that the landowner would likely use the property in a practical way but cannot do so under the rules of the ordinance. It does not mean that the land cannot be put to reasonable use whatsoever without the variance. The second factor is that the landowner's problem is due to circumstances unique to the property and not caused by the landowner. This uniqueness generally relates to the physical characteristics of the particular piece of property, that is, to the land, and not the personal characteristics or preferences of the landowner. And the third factor is that the variance would not alter the essential character of the neighborhood. This factor is used to consider whether the resulting structure would be out of scale, out of place, or otherwise inconsistent with the surrounding area. In this case, it is the opinion of city staff that this particular request does not meet standards under the practical difficulties test. On October 22nd, 2024, the Planning Commission held a public hearing in which there was no public comment. After a review of the application materials and hearing from the applicant, the planning commission by a 4-0 vote recommended denial of the variance request to the 14-foot sidewall height standard. City council should review the request, the planning commission's formal recommendation, and consider approving or denying the variance as presented in resolution 2024-72.
Excuse me, sir, do you happen to be Mr. Flagstead? Did you want to say anything?
I can, share what I'm.
Or maybe we could ask you some questions, or,
Want me to come up here?
yeah, right up there. State your name, address, and we'll.
Hold your right hand, swear to tell the truth.
Got it. Jason Flagstead, 4806 239th Avenue, East Bethel.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I've got a large camper that requires a 14-foot.
How big is it?
It's a 13-foot 7 inches
13.7.
tall.
So
you
you
need a
barely
14.
clear most overpasses.
Oh,
huh?
no, it's fine. It's fine.
Really?
It's actually fairly common size for a fifth wheel camper, but it requires a 14-foot door, at least that's the smallest.
Is that the top of the air conditioning unit?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly. And I want to get it out of my yard. I want to get it in the building. So I designed a building, I was hoping to put it as close to the sidewall as possible instead of having to use a vaulted truss and park it in the middle of my building. So that's the whole reason for pushing it to the side. To do that, I need a 16-foot sidewall. I mean, I could probably do it with a 15-foot sidewall, but regardless, I mean, 2-foot increments, I just figured 16 would be fine. But to get a 14-foot in there, you need a 12-inch headspace for the curve of the,
Why did you want 2 doors?
just to make it look nice.
Oh,
So they'll be symmetrical.
so you don't have an offset door?
Yeah, they'll be symmetrical right on the front of the
What are these 10-foot wide doors, 12-foot?
12 wide, 14 high. Yep. And the building will be all, I mean, it'll have wainscoting on it and it'll have the soffits. It'll be a very nice looking.
What's the length of your RV or whatever the term?
35 feet.
35?
Yeah.
I've never owned one. Tim owns one.
This is my third one, actually.
Oh, yeah?
It's actually my smallest one I've had. So we got rid of the biggest one. So, but I want to be able to keep it out of the elements when I'm not using it.
Yeah. You guys have questions?
I know I was
Questions?
out to his home today, and it's very nice, set up nice.
I think we
Your,
have to
your
move
fifth
to
wheel looks
accept it
great
first
too.
before we do discussion. We have to make a motion.
Well, I don't, you're standing right there, so maybe I can grant me the liberty to, let's just, do you have any questions?
So, I mean, I have no issue with it myself. I mean, I was looking at your place, and to the west is a housing development, but they're a ways away from you. To the east, there's nothing. And I mean, I have no problem with it at all. I think it would look fine
Yeah, and the
for what
building
you
will be,
have.
the closest point of the building is 400 feet from the road.
Right.
It's a long ways away off the road. And it's, my closest neighbor is my brother, and it's 168 feet from his line. So it's
Right.
basically right in the middle of the property.
Yeah, like I said, I was out there and I don't see a problem with it myself. That's my opinion of that.
Aaron,
Well,
what was the reasoning with the planning commission for denial? Other than it's the ordinance?
Ordinance-based. Yeah, I mean, the council, as I said in the report, has made numerous changes in the last, since 2014 to continue to increase sidewall height.
Yeah, I think
And now
Mr.
we've reached the
DeRoche was
max.
involved in them too.
Yeah. And now we've reached the max and now we want to exceed the max again. So at some point you find the ordinance and work within it, or you change the ordinance or allow variances.
That's an important thing, just for anybody watching, what Mr. Smith just said. It's one thing to just look at the documents, but to actually take your time, your time, your expense on fuel and everything, and go out and look at sites to make sure that you have an informed opinion when you make these decisions. That's an important part of being on the city council. You don't just sit here and look at documents or look at, aerial photographs. You actually go out and look at it. So that's important. So any further questions, comments, or what have you?
Well, being out at the site, you can see that it has a minimal impact on the neighborhood. Nobody's gonna see it. Having owned an RV, I'd like to have my side, my pole barn's a little bit higher. I can't get mine in, so mine sits outside and it takes its toll. I think by allowing this, it allows you to use your property to its full extent, and it is a different circumstance. Yes, you've got a unit that you can't fit in a normal size one, that's something we need to take into consideration moving forward because they're getting more popular. So I'm with Jim. I don't see an issue with this whatsoever. I think it's the right position, the right scenario to grant the variance for something like this.
Well, I was involved in the 14-foot.
Yeah.
Maybe it's time to bring it up a couple feet.
I
But
figure as
for-
long as it's structurally sound and everything is fine, you know, an extra 2 feet.
That's
Shouldn't be
the
bad.
requirement. If you go over it, I have to provide engineered drawings. as well.
Right, that's what I figure.
What are the architectural?
That's the engineered drawings will have to be supplied if I go above 14. So I'll have to pay the supplier of the building.
Right, pay the trusses.
Well, it's the sidewall more than anything, but it's engineered overall.
So, lost my train of thought.
What kind of construction
Pole
is it?
barn.
Is
It's a
it,
pole barn.
it's a pole barn?
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
That's what I was gonna ask.
Yep.
Been a long night.
Yeah. Brian, did you have anything? You're in the construction biz.
Well, if council wants to look at sidewall height again, that is having proven this variance, we should change the ordinance again rather than allowing this, because I agree with staff and the planning commission that for a variance, this does not meet the standards for approval as a variance. It has been brought up before in the past by people that want to exceed the 14 feet, and it did not meet the practical difficulties, because this is more or less a want and a need. Look at the agenda item we just looked. This woman wanted to have an accessory structure on her property, which is allowed by ordinance, but she could not because of all the issues that she faced with her property, that this was the only place that
Yep.
it could go, so this was an exception. This would be asking, I want an exception from the rule just because I want. I don't blame you for asking.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't blame you for asking, I
My
understand.
issue's trivial compared to what I listened to earlier.
Yeah, I understand your want, and it's absolutely nothing against you. I'm just looking at it as these are the rules.
And I
Why should we make an
I
exception?
see your point, and I'm kinda not loving it myself, but again, I think about what do we complain or what do we act on in terms of zoning violations or whatever? It's complaints. It's whether the neighbors, if it bothers adjacent property owners. And based on what I've heard about this particular situation, I don't see a way it's gonna bother the adjacent property owners. If it was, they'd be here tonight saying something, or they'd have been at the planning meeting, commission meeting. So I'm, and I don't like to go against the planning commission unless it's, absolutely necessary. I think in this case, and also being rural residential, which is, just north of rural, where it would be allowed. It's kind of like, I think we're gonna let this happen and then maybe revisit the ordinances and kick it up to 16 or something, or 15, or just continue to take it on a case-by-case basis, because
Mayor,
they're pretty rare.
if I could make a suggestion, given the fact that you've had all the council members such as yourself weigh in on this issue, I agree with Councilmember DeRoche that now might be a time to actually make a motion for in a second, either granting the variance as requested or
Don't you want me to
denying.
continue to talk about it all night, Eric?
Robert Rules of Order.
Okay, well, do we have a motion and a second then?
I'll make a motion to approve the variance for this pole building, property address 4806, 239th Avenue Northeast, PIN number 253-423-440003.
I was thinking that might be the motion. I have a question for our community development director, because that might just change the motion a little bit, or at least a recommendation by myself. Is there a resolution in the packet granting
No.
this particular
There is
variance?
not, so
Okay.
I will need to creatively draft something and bring it back to the
So that was going to
council
be
for
my
consent next time.
right, that was going to be my suggestion, if the Councilmember Smith could make that motion, but also add that staff be directed to bring to the next city council a resolution granting the variance to be placed on the consent agenda.
Yeah, I'll put that in there. We need a resolution number for approval.
So the number 2024-37 is only for the denial, right?
It'll be 72.
Okay.
72 will circle back as an approval in the consent agenda in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Second it.
So the motion's made and seconded to approve this yet-to-be-numbered resolution. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Let the record show that Councilmember Mundell opposed.
It wasn't impersonal, just,
Yeah, no, that's fine, Brian.
understand rules
Yeah, yeah. Okay, well, item 9A, staff report. You got anything you wanna?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, a couple of items. Wanted to say that as of today, 14.5% of our registered voters have voted absentee.
Wow,
I think we're in the 800 neighborhood right now.
wow.
And the reason I want to mention that is because it is a tremendous strain on staff right
Yeah,
now.
yeah, it is.
In terms of the hours that they're putting in. As you know, the state legislature kind of changed the available hours. You can come in and vote in person for absentee in person
Yeah,
and on weekends as well. And so that's creating a scenario which will either end up in overtime or for those that are hourly or comp time. So that'll be up to them to decide how they want to handle that.
Yep.
But it could have some budget ramifications, none of which the state compensates us for.
of course not.
So, but it does give folks the opportunity to come in and vote, and we're thankful that they're exercising their right to vote. So
Yeah,
that's a good thing. Did you, Mr. Mayor, want me to touch on the broadband?
yeah, please.
Okay. So as council is aware, there was an effort by Midco to, going back even further, the county, when I was there, we set aside $8.5 million roughly for broadband expansion in Anoka County, mostly in the northern areas of Anoka County because we knew that there was connectivity issues, to include East Bethel. And so they set it up as an RFP process whereby providers such as Midco could send in an RFP. The county then changed.
Request for proposal.
Yep. The county then changed to a grant process where they were going to grant dollars to the providers. So the providers quickly filled out their grant applications, sent them in. None of the providers met the qualifications, interesting enough. And then it kind of languished for a bit. And the dollars then, I will call it parochial political games that were played. In other words, those commissioners that didn't have areas that had connectivity issues really thought there were maybe more creative ways to use this money, which was the wrong direction for communities such as East Bethel. And I know that Paul Johnson, Aggressive Hydraulics, weighed in heavily with Commissioner Brasted. I have a relationship with the new county administrator, Jim Dickinson. In combination, we kind of descended on them and said, you know what, really this doesn't make any sense. Dollars should just be granted to the cities. The cities should then contract with their respective providers, agree on what their projects are going to look like, and make these investments that are absolutely critical. The number one question I think a lot of our builders get is what's the connectivity in that area?
Yep.
You know, our people are going to work from home or school from home or whatever the issue is. Quite honestly, that's just the form of entertainment today is to
Streaming. Yep.
Stream it. And so that's a pretty important issue, and it's certainly important to us as it is to every other city within this county. So, good news is, we are looking at $1 million grant, which is gonna leverage 600,000 from, Midco, so 1.6 million, which if you divide that into our annual budget of $6.6 million, it's about a 25% of our budget that we are getting invested now in the city of East Bethel. And I can pull it up here. These are the areas in which the investments are going. So what you will see coming to you in the not too distant future is a joint powers agreement whereby the city of East Bethel works with the city of Bethel and the township of Linwood to lead a project with Midco that's gonna basically cover all these red dots that you see. This is Bethel over here, this is Linwood over here, so Linwood has a good chunk. They're getting a good chunk of connectivity, but we are as well in these areas here. Down here is where Mr. Johnson is located on Briarwood, and I have the actual areas that are being impacted here. 239th Avenue and Hupp Street, Briarwood Lane and Briar Creek Development, Oak Glen Estates Development, 226 Lane, 241st Avenue and London Street, 245th Avenue, Wagaman Woods Development, and Sims Road and University Avenue. So,
Good coverage.
while it may not cover every area, it certainly is a nice downstroke in terms of some of the
Yeah.
issues that are out there right now. And like I say, I've kind of introduced you folks to the concept of opium or other people's money, and that's precisely what this is other people's money.
Yeah.
And it is federal dollars that have come through and should be used for this purpose. I know the state has additional grants that are out there for this. They've taken an aggressive approach to trying to connect folks that are out there as well, realizing the economic benefit to it and educational benefit and everything else. So this is I wouldn't say it's a grand slam, but probably a home run. So it's a good thing for the community.
No, it's great news, Matt. Thank you.
So the red lines are those areas that are gonna get it?
No, these
Or
red
that
lines
currently
currently
have
have the backbone, but this area here, it's
Red
actually
dots.
green. It's gonna be difficult to see in this picture
Red
here.
dots.
Can you-
You can see the green there.
Can you send this map to
Yes.
council?
Yep, I will forward that to you. The green is kind of the loop that's being installed. And so some small little areas, but be it small or otherwise, they're connecting, so it's important.
Well, where I'm looking at is around the Coon Lake area.
Over here. So you guys have connection already in this area here. So
Really?
if there's other areas, and this is the thing, I mean, I know that Midco is kind of throwing a figure out there. I know they want to connect every place that makes absolute sense to do so. So if there's some area that you guys are aware of that would be an easy connection, by all means, pass it along, and we'll work with Midco to try and figure out how we can get that accomplished. Maybe the city puts up a little bit of money. Who knows how that works? We're going to be going into HRA here in not too long, but this would be a housing and redevelopment type of expense, eligible expense as well. So if there's other areas that are critical and should be considered in connection, like for example, your Viking Meadows Golf Course here, that'll come off of this trunk line more than likely and feed in there.
Yep.
Making Midco aware of projects that are happening helps them kind of plan as well. So
Yep.
we're working hand in hand with them.
So what are the rates that Midco is gonna own up, that they're gonna raise them? I mean, nothing's free in this world.
Well, I'm assuming, Councilmember DeBroche, that they're going to recapture their $600,000 in one way or another because they're a business. I don't know what their current rates are. I would assume they'd have to be competitive with, probably other providers that are out there. But you look at the alternative. What's the alternative? Starlink, not cheap. You look at, I forget the other one.
CenturyLink.
Well, it's a satellite-based one as well, very expensive. But this might be more affordable than maybe some of the other options that people are,
So is this gonna benefit Aggressive Hydraulics on 65?
They're already connected.
Yeah, they got Starlink, right? I think that's
I
what
don't know
Paul
what-
said.
I don't know what they
I
got.
believe they're already connected.
I thought they
So they're
had,
down in here?
they,
Yeah,
they
yeah,
had
they're
a
over there.
high-speed line
Yeah.
brought in just for
Yeah.
them.
Yeah,
I
Starlink.
think
It's
they
at his
paid for
primary-
the whole area to be
His-
brought in.
He doesn't have it at his residence.
No, I'm talking his business.
Well,
No,
he's
his
got it at
business
his
is connected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's good news.
Yeah, I sent a message to Mr. Johnson, said, great work on this, and truly, it's, I want to thank Commissioner Brasted,
Yeah.
she worked behind the scenes, you know, Administrator Dickinson, he's a heavy hitter when he wants to get things done, so I really appreciate his hard work on this too. And he sees the benefit of, you know,
And
something other
you're
than
not gonna
Andover.
say it, so I'll say it. It's nice to have a city administrator who's the former chair of the Anoka County Commissioners and knows all those people,
Well,
and get things done.
that doesn't
So-
always mean things get done, but it is
It
helpful
doesn't
to know
hurt,
some folks.
anyway. Yeah, doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's great news. Do you have anything else, Matt?
No, for the sake of time, I will stand for questions if there are any, so.
Okay.
None.
All right, as far as council reports go, I'm gonna get kicked if I don't mention Tim Miller first. Because I failed to do so at a
Well-
recent meeting.
Well, I know we got a big election coming up,
Uh,
and,
I've heard that, yeah.
yep, and, want to encourage people to vote, just get out and vote. It's been a wild first 2 years here on council. It started out by when we brought back the public forum and gave the residents a voice back. That was key when we came into office. We opened up some large portions of 65 corridor for steel post construction and steel-sided panel buildings to allow businesses affordable options to build here, to exist and expand. We changed some security features for businesses so they no longer have to have the side windows and glass rear doors, helping make our businesses safer. We opened up the amount of storage space that businesses can have behind their buildings so they actually can have inventory. We did away with an ordinance that required you to update your septic system when you changed your doors and windows and siding. We worked with or granted variances to local businesses like North Country Concrete, A-Blast Powder Coat, Washing Commercial Painters, Bolt World. They all are expanding right now in our city and not going anywhere. We even worked out a deal with, was it B-Rock Auto to keep their doors open in a residential area by brokering a deal with them and the residents. We negotiated the best deal we could with Nexus, making sure the city received the max amount for the loan, which was $100,000, along with money every year with 2% increase on that instead of tax. They told us they were coming here with or without us, and we did our best when we found that information out to get the best deal possible for the city. And they're now a part of our family here in the city. We removed the permit fees to have chickens. 6 chickens was 150, anything above that was 300. You no longer need that anymore. We have temporary storage buildings that can be used in rural areas, along with storage containers. We now can clean up some areas, have safer options for storage, something we never could have before. We worked with staff on our budget and expectations coming in for the second straight year in a row. We're gonna have some of the lowest increase in taxes in the whole county. That's phenomenal. We changed the complaint procedure to move efficient and be more genuine, to keep anonymous, that feature, but it gives us a way to track and identify and undercover the root cause a lot quicker while updating the person who's making the complaint. So it's a much simpler program, should help us out in the long run. It's gonna help us identify areas that we need to concentrate on. Kevin mentioned it earlier, we drive around the city. We look at these variances. We visited your house today and drove by and saw what it was like. It's very important that when we grant variances, we keep in mind that what kind of impact does it have on your neighborhood, your neighbor itself, and is it the right thing to do? In your case, we think it's the right thing to do. But we try real hard to make sure that the residents and businesses have a chance to either expand, build, and or grow here. So we're gonna try our hardest to do what we can. It's about value to your property. It's about preserving value to your property, and that's key in every situation that we're taking a look at. We've approved a number of developments. We've even butted heads on some of them. One development, when it's gonna be done, it's gonna be the biggest one the city's ever seen. One big issue is that we like to table things that we're not sure of. If we don't have the right information or feel we need more information, doesn't matter the subject, we'll table it. We'll come back another day once we have the information we need to make the right choice, or at least make the best choice we possibly can. Currently, right now, we're trying to figure out a drop site for trees. We don't want to get caught what happened to us last time with this storm that came through, and our residents didn't have a place to go with, you know, what was left over and the damage. And hopefully we can do that. You'll see a barndominium ordinance coming out shortly we've been working on. It's new. It should be coming out shortly. We're putting the final touches on some of it. And it's going to give our residents and or people coming to this city another opportunity or a chance to do something new. Stay with the country feel. And it should give the city a good look, a good feel, and it should look great. We're working on some safety protocol issues for some of the buildings here in the city. We've got some liability issues that we got to clean up. Once it was brought to our attention, we're not going to let it go. We're going to stay on top of it and make sure that liability issues or that we're exposed to as a city are limited. And we've overcome a lot this year. We had a mayor drop out on us and for no reason, and Kevin Lewis stepped up and did, I think, a great job for this city. Bob stepped in as a councilman and answered the call. Thank you. We've added a great city administrator with a ton of knowledge, and right now we just proved why he's here. So thank you, Matt. But it's been a fun 2 years, so thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else have a council report?
Just say, hope everyone has a safe and happy Halloween, and if anyone's going deer hunting, stay safe out there.
Yep. Well, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
this
moved.
meeting.
Second.
And I should mention, after this, we're going into Housing and Redevelopment Association, Authority,
I
excuse me.
think Jim's the president, isn't he?
Yeah, he's the big kahuna.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got a motion made and seconded to adjourn the city council meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none heard. Do you want to sit in this seat, or you
No,
okay where
I'm
you
good.
are?
Here.
You want the hammer?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll throw the hammer at it.
I'll call the HRA
Thank you, guys.
meeting to order October 28th, 2024. Can I have a motion to adopt tonight's agenda?
Make a motion to adopt agenda.
Okay.
Is there any discussion? I have a first and a second. Hearing none, we go to the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None heard.
Done like a real trooper. Think he's done it before, so.
Yeah.
Number 3, approval of minutes, July 22nd, 2024, HRA meeting. Any or do I have a motion?
Make a
To
motion to approve the minutes.
Have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none. Number 4, financial update. That's yours.
Mr. President
Thank
and
you.
members of the commission, I have before you here the financial update per Minnesota State Statute 469.033, Subdivision 6. The East Belleville HRA must prepare and file a budget in accordance with the budget procedure of the city. The city and the HRA approved a preliminary levy of $77,000 for year 2025. And to ensure the continued legal status of the city HRA as a standalone authority and to provide HRA funds for eligible projects. As you know, staff time, we transfer $32,000 of that $77,000 for staff related functions here into the city general fund. Some people ask why we do that. Well, it's either you increase the general fund or you take it from an HRA, but it's the same cost. It equals out the same. So you'll see for the 2025 expenditure budget, there's the general fund transfer for staff-supported activities of $32,000, HRA projects and gap financing of $45,000, total levy of $77,000, and the total unaudited HRA cash account balance as of September 30th, 2024 is $269,767. And the remaining amount of $45,000 will go into that HRA cash, bringing it to a projected $308,267 by year end of 2024, unless we have no unbudgeted expenses.
Is that net of monies given for staff salaries?
Yes, that's with the
That's
money
free and
taken out
clear,
already.
that's free and clear.
Yep.
Okay.
So starting in 2024, the city began receiving metro area sales and use tax for housing. The city has received $12,733.30 thus far in 2024, and that's also reflected in that cash balance. So again, it's, we talked a little bit earlier about connectivity and broadband, and this could be a possibility for some dollars to be utilized. I'll have to double check the legality of it, but I believe that it can fall under HRA. And if it's used for housing type of projects, we can get a legal look at that. But at any rate, those are kind of some of the, the dollars are in there, they can be used. If they're not used, they continue to roll over until there is a project that comes about. Some of those metro area sales tax has to be used for housing. There's some limitations on that. And so you'll recall we had some discussions earlier of the color of money and how do you maybe work with some projects that are out there, if you put some money into housing, will they then cover the roads that the city would otherwise, generally cover, that type of thinking outside the box. Sorry?
No, I just said, yeah.
I heard it over here. You must have been
Practicing my
I thought it really was
ventriloquism.
Aaron. No. Anyways, this is just for informational purposes only, but wanted to give you an update on the current financial status and update of the HRA, if you have any questions.
Do we need a motion on that or anything, or no?
No, it's
No,
information.
just for informational purposes.
Okay.
I'm a big fan of using monies to leverage into bigger monies.
Yep.
The OPM, whatever you want to call it. But we don't have enough money to do major projects or anything. None of us is delusional about that, but we do have enough money to do grant applications and get some serious money lobbying going anyway.
Right.
I'm sure you know some of those folks from your time at the state capitol, the people who hang around that neck of the woods.
Yes, I do. There are some people we will be working very closely with as the legislative session starts here.
Yeah.
So my hope is that, maybe from an EDA standpoint, that we have more success in that area.
Yeah.
HRA is, maybe a little more of a challenge for this community perhaps. Some of the HRA housing goals that the state has might not be in line with, some of the goals that the city has. So
Yeah.
we have to look at that and consider what limitations, they screw them down pretty tight, but what limitations there are, and if that's something
Yeah, that's
this
what we need
council
to
wants to
understand.
invest in. Yeah. So.
All right, number 5.
Mr. President, members of the commission, item 5 is a resolution 2024-04 setting meeting dates for 2025. And we have to set those dates by our bylaws require that we hold an annual meeting prior to or preceding the second regular city council meeting of the month of January in each year. And the HRA must also hold regular meetings for the first month of each quarter prior to or following the second regularly scheduled city council meeting or at such other time as the board may determine. So you'll see the resolution here that's attached for the January 27th, 2025 annual meeting, April 28th, 2025 regular meeting, July 28th, 2025 regular meeting, October 27th, 2025 regular meeting. And that would be adopting those dates as of now. And I'm not sure if everyone knows what their schedule looks like going into 2025, but there's some flexibility perhaps if we need to change that. But this is just setting those meeting dates by resolution here tonight.
Would you like a motion,
Yeah.
President Smith?
Yes.
So I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2024-04, setting HRA meeting dates for 2025.
I'll second the motion.
We have a first and a second on the resolution. Any discussion?
Mr. Look, I assume that these dates have been set up as always to follow council meetings?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yep.
That's all I need to know.
Any more discussion? We'll proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None heard. Somebody want to make a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion.
I have one, can I ask a question?
Order, you're in order.
I'm in order, okay. At our July 22nd meeting, which is the last time we met, I believe, we talked about having a conversation at the next work meeting, which was August 12th, about setting goals for the HRA. And we talked about a little bit, and then we said, well, we need to have another meeting in the near future. I don't recall that happening. Did that happen and I just don't know about it?
Mr. President.
It says, Look stated they can run an two things. Look stated they can run an analysis of what other HRAs are doing, but it is probably $250,000 minimum for a levy if you are trying to build up a chest of money to make these purchases. But did we ever do a survey of what neighboring communities are doing with their HRAs? If not, I would like that to be something that we undertake after election and when the staff is fully recovered from this. And Aaron has help in the community development department with the new employee, who I'm happy to say is an East Bethel resident. That's kind of nice too. But it was that thing, and then down at the bottom, these are the work meeting, from the work meeting minutes. Lewis suggested having a sit down in the next couple of weeks with whoever would like to participate to discuss ideas for the priorities for the HRA. Did that ever happen? Because if I did, at my age, you gotta ask if these things happen, huh?
It's your meeting.
It's your meeting, you sit down with someone?
Yeah, I sat down with myself, but no results were produced. Yeah, it didn't produce a thing, yeah. No, anyway, I guess what my point is I still want to get serious about setting some clear goals for the HRA, and I'd like to know what other, what Ham Lake, Oak Grove, St. Francis in particular are doing with their HRA. Do I need to make a motion that we do that, or just?
I don't think so. We can direct staff to take care of that.
Yeah. Or you
We'll
could
research that.
Just tell me to shut up. It's another option.
Nope, never would do that. Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Yep.
Second.
Motion
Any
made.
discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Your
Done.
mouse is on the